Atomic chaos theory guarantees that we'll play like lightning shots, sounding like thunder. For every time in the face that it hits us, we're faster. Well, they should know by now. They see the world keeps trying to shake us. It only wakes us. The pendulum swings. The pendulum swings. It's in a beautiful darkness. Only another. It's full steam ahead. Full steam ahead. All above the Betty Express. Misdirected from the start. It's a runaway train. I come a freight train. I come a freight train. In a beautiful darkness, the Betty Express. In a beautiful darkness.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I did go get my errand done. I did stop by the boo store, and I realized. So here's the thing: I forget that I am dressed up on Cosplay Wednesday because it's kind of a normal work day for me. Other than like, I do have the awesomeness of getting to dress up, but my life as an inside cat doesn't change much. Uh, when I'm doing Cosplay Wednesday, in my inside cat capacity. But as I kept getting strange looks from the lady in the liquor store, when I got up there, I was like, I do realize that I'm dressed up as Miss Frizzle. So I do understand. There is a point. I was like, it's sort of for my hobby slash semi-professionalish job. And Jason J, not much, not much, but I did get adult beverages and a baconator. So, I mean, even if the road is long and stupid, I have a baconator. So, as I said, I I revel in the small things. So, dear God. Now, um for obvious reasons, I blacked out where exactly we are or were. So I kind of picked a place vaguely somewhere closest to. I think I skipped ahead a little bit. I think nothing of importance was missed, but here we go. I do have her at 1.25 cuz and yeah, none. None. I told Mr. Mo I was like I may have a long night depending on how late they are able to stay and deliberate. I was like, so don't expect me if you need anything. I might still be recovering from stupid.
Yeah, I have a ticket open actually with one of the companies. And then Bernhardt says to another officer, he says he's been having problems with his cameras recently. Now that's not what he said. But the reason why that's important is because it generates the origin of this suspicion. It generates the origin of this relayed information that Mr. Caneiro is saying he's been having problems with his cameras and that's why they're not working. But that's not accurate. And the problem is that there was no follow-up to it at that time. Throughout the course of the testimony, I asked a bunch of different officers about access points. You've heard that word. And I said, do you know whether this is an access point? Do you know whether that's an access point? Do you know whether that's an access point? No one knew. No one knew what an access point was. No one knew anything about that, let alone whether it contributed to an issue with the Wi-Fi. But we do know that there's an access point right above that DVR in the garage. And we do know that Katie testified that just a couple days before that, Paul was trying to fix an issue with the Wi-Fi.
I thought Paul had no idea. I thought you said Paul was not a geniusologist about electronical stuff. Like he didn't know. I mean, who is Paul? He only works in computer technology.
We also know from the testimony, because I don't know exactly how they're going to characterize it, but if they do characterize it as he turned off his cameras, that's not what we see. What we see is a video of Mr. Caneiro approaching that area. And I asked pretty much any.
Like, we don't actually we see a bald spot, but I mean, maybe his wife had a bald spot. Maybe she wears a wig. I mean, did anyone test to see if any of, the other Canero females were in fact drag kings? Look, I know I don't someone, anyone, when this woman runs as judge, please allow me to come to New Jersey. Please. Okay, look, I understand we live in a different day and time, but if anyone and everyone will allow me to have a fake tan, to go to every single one of her political rallies as her, obviously we'll need to crowdfund this, but I'm just saying I am willing, able, and I carry the level of petty that one would need to well, to basically dedicate my life to making fun of this woman. Now, I'm not saying that that's a worthy goal, but let's be serious. Who would have more fun? Oh, who is it? It's not the Stein guy that kept going to the town councils. Alex Stein? I don't know. I don't do good names, but the weirdo that always goes and does fun things, or at least he's weird for the bit. Any hoozle, not. I'm not saying that anyone should edit this, doing not so good with a shake weight, but I am not saying that if you happen to take a screenshot and edit a shake weight in her hand, I wouldn't put it up tomorrow, which is when I'm guessing that we'll get done with verdicts. But, I need to start creating my own meme army. Like Megan has. So I'm not saying that you should take a screenshot right now and make a shake weight, meme. But I mean, oh my God, she was the one stripper who was actually like stripping her way through law school. Probably had to do a lot of dancing to from the windows to the walls, and they salute you all.
Officer that was on scene. How was it plugged in? Was the DVR system, like, was it attached to an extension cord? Was it the extension cord that was turned off? Was it?
I'm gonna need the extension cord company. Is the extension cord company in the room? How is I to know? I mean, I don't know if he's using AC/DC or other electronics powers. And he would have gotten away with it if he had just bought a better goddamn extension cord. What in the name of Hades is this trial?
The power strip is where the outlets. Detective Catalona, who took photos of the scene. We don't have any photos of the outlets or the wires or the wiring or anything. We have body-worn camera footage of the removal of the DVR, and it takes approximately 7.5 minutes for the DVR to be removed because there's so many different wires. And you can see the officer pulling up the wires. They showed you this video. We also know that there's a computer.
If they can't unplug it, you must acquit. I'm going to do all of her Johnny Cochran quips from now on. This is the only way I'm going to stay sane. If they don't know how to unplug it, you must acquit. If it was in a power strip, he ain't no crip. I don't know. Look, I'm working. I'm new with this. Give me a sec.
In the basement. I asked Detective Catalona about that. That appears to be a computer. That appears to be another screen, a tablet. And then when he testified about a glove, I said, take another look. Isn't that a glove on a keyboard next to the computer? He said, oh yeah, looks like a keyboard.
Ew, Paul. What kind of weirdo gloves up for themselves? I mean, I always figured you were into really weird Smurf prawn, but you glove up to love yourself? I mean, I think you're gross, but I would have thought that You would be disgusted with yourself and still engaging in self-love. Well, it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome. She's been closing for 3 hours. Now, our captor has become our friend because we have to survive. She's now like our god. We love Kim K. She's so smart. She broke us. She broke us, MLS.
City, I suspect, is going to tell you, well, the DVR system was hardwired. It doesn't affect the Wi-Fi, or it's not affected by the Wi-Fi. First of all, says who? Says who? The only person that testified to that was Detective Weisbrot, who's like, well, it's my understanding that it would affect it. He wasn't.
Hey, MLS, how many times during the closing statement have you said, like, says who? And when you start out the financial part of your closing with, Paul wasn't stealing money, and then he was paying most of it back. Paul was not lying to Keith. Oh, well, Paul was doctoring the statements of the money he was taking, but he just didn't want Keith to get mad because Keith, he gets all crazy and stuff. Oh my God. We are crowdsourcing this. We are doing puppets. It is legal shenanigans Muppet theater. I don't know how we're going to do this, but I have a couple ideas. And I think by the time I finish my very watered down adult beverage, we will have this figured out. So I will start what's the one where you're supposed to make things and then it's not GoFundMe, because that's generally for like actual charity stuff and like medical stuff. Is it Kickstarter where I promise to make something and you guys pay me? Because I'm going to need to hire an assistant editor. There we go. Now I'm going to be real with you guys. I will have to rewatch this because I am a lightweight. So anything that Slightly Tipsy Mo says is contractually obligated to be seen and deliberated by Sober Mo before any decisions are made, unless or until I get stuck on Amazon and start buying Silly Putty. But that's more of a Mr. Mo issue. But if I promise anything on stream, all promises by Slightly Tipsy Mo must be run through by well, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm so glad they're going to make more. Yeah, this is the problem. You have now exhausted the jury and whatever points you were going to make. And I do think that, like I said, I do call balls and strikes. I mean, she's more of a, well, something. But I think that she has put up 2 reasonable points of doubt. And as much as I make fun of her, I at least try to give her respect when I think she's wandered somewhat near a point. But yeah, pretty much. Yes, as Tammy says, anything Slightly Tipsy Mo says is void pending review by Sober Mo. Yes.
Speaking as an expert or from firsthand experience, you didn't hear from anyone that said that at all. And in fact, Dr. Gould testified. Who installed your cameras, your surveillance system? He says, I did the actual installation of the cameras and I did the hard wiring of all of the coaxial cables to the main DVR that I had set up. Unfortunately, once I had set it all up, I couldn't get it to stream through the router, the modem. I just couldn't get it to actually work. So I contacted Paul and had him come over to do the internet protocols or whatever needed so that I could stream it through the firewall. I asked him, was there any type of system that he put in place for you along the way? He said he did an external hard, I guess it would be a router firewall that I had Square One manage just so I didn't have to worry about anything happening to my system. Unfortunately, I didn't understand how it worked. He did. So I would always have him take care of any problems that occurred, and one of them was trying to get the video cameras to work. Was there something with an acronym that he used? He set up a DDNS. And I know it has something to do with changing IP addresses, but I don't understand it. He did. Okay. So you mentioned you don't understand it. Is this something that's simple or more complex? To me, it was complex. And did Paul ever set up any access points in your house anywhere? He set up an access point over our garage, but it was too far away from the antennas for our router, and this way my wife. I would always have him take care of any problems that occurred, and one of them was trying to get the video cameras to work. Was there something with an acronym that he used? He set up a DDNS. And I know it has something to do with changing IP addresses, but I don't understand it. He did. Okay. So you mentioned you understand it. Is this something that's simple or more complex? To me, it was complex. And did Paul ever set up any access points in your house anywhere? He set up an access point over our garage, but it was too far away from the antennas for our router, and this way my wife had her office there, and it allowed us to have better internet access at the end of the house. Now, this doesn't explain everything, but it does demonstrate that this is complicated. It's not as simple as, oh, well, this has wires and Wi-Fi doesn't, so therefore it's no impact.
When did anyone ever make that assertion? Like, as a neo-Luddite, as a person that, stopped at, what was that, the Razor phone where it had the little, keyboard? I was happy there. I could have stayed there. I was reluctant to join the iPhone, like, smartphone thing. I was happy with my little Razor phone. That being said, no one said this in this trial. No one said that Wi-Fi and Ethernet were the same thing. And I have been sober this entire trial until now.
Where's the expert testimony to say that? I mean, it's simply, you can tell that it's complicated. And Detective Brady testified that when he spoke to Paul and Paul was trying to explain it to him, he didn't really understand it either. And I asked him, like, it sounds pretty technical. And Detective Brady said, yeah, it was. Now, Detective Brady is a detective and he does not have body-worn camera attached to him. But there's many other officers on scene that did. And if Detective Brady, with all of his years of law enforcement training and experience, had said, hey, buddy, come over here, I want to record, just stand here while I have this conversation with Mr. Caneiro while he explains the issues he's having with his Wi-Fi. Record it. Maybe we would have a memorialization of that explanation. We don't have that. But the fact that a system is hardwired doesn't mean, in and of itself, that it's not affected by the Wi-Fi or that it doesn't affect the Wi-Fi. And similarly, the fact that the screen cuts out doesn't mean that cameras were shut off. There's many potential explanations there.
Okay, I'll I just need a quick little opening clip of Unsolved Mysteries talking about spontaneous human combustion and all that jazz, because I feel like that would make perfect sense.
Amongst religious scholars
At this point,
about the fallen angels.
this man, I trust, I believe, I would rather listen to his theories on anything. In fact, if the defense brought this man as a pinch hitter for their closing at this point, and he decided to take me on a long-winded explanation of why the Anunnaki were responsible for Keith Caneiro's, death, I would much prefer it than listening to this twat waffle babble for longer. But this is our job. This is our cross to bear. I am waiting for the wardrobe. Apparently someone told her uterus was showing in the plaid. I don't know.
As far as power strip, outlet, wire, access point, we don't know.
I believe
We also know
her.
on the 19th.
I believe her entire closing was close to 3.5 to 4 hours. I have stopped counting for self-preservation.
Paul did send an email seeking assistance. He's discussing access points. He's discussing an issue with his firewall. And evidence. This is consistent with what he is telling the police. This is consistent with what he explained, or what Katie explained to you about issues with the Wi-Fi. Now I want to talk about the timeline of 15 Willowbrook.
Oh God, no.
This is the timeline. I know we kind of wrote it down. There's an
All right, we are going to because I believe there's a part where they do a sidebar.
saw your dad going toward the garage to the
Poor Judge Kent. I swear to goodness, someone better get him like a big old basket full of muffins or special brownies or something, or just like 27. Like, go clean the Costco out of vodka and then leave it on this man's doorstep and just say, from humanity, thank you.
said, how much time passed from the time that you looked behind you and saw your dad going toward the garage to the time that you stepped out of the house and saw the garage door coming up with the car pulling out, and she said,
Oh, Lord. Oh, dear God. It just keeps going. Oh no, internet, don't do this to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to bring everyone back in to let you know what's going on right this minute. So we're having an IT issue. So we're going to try to fix that IT issue right now before we continue on with the summations. So what I'm doing is that I've just allowed the jury to go to lunch. They're going to come back at 12:30. So instead of lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, it's actually 11:30 to 12:30. So we're staying on track for the day, but I wanted to bring you in respectfully to let you hear it from me that that's exactly what we're doing. It's an IT issue. We'll start back up at 12:30. Please be here at 12:30 because again, I locked the doors, and it's no disrespect to anyone. I just want to make sure that the jury is completely focused on Ms. Mastalone's summation, Mr. Decker's summation, and that we don't have any issues. So I'll see everybody back right at 12:30. We'll start.
Judge, that was God giving you a sign. You know that story where, the guy's standing on the roof and it's flooding and a guy comes by in a boat and he says, no, God's going to, save me. So I don't need to get in the boat. And then, so on and so forth. He never accepts any help and he ends up in heaven. This is God trying to stop this. This is God trying to protect us. Don't fix her PowerPoint. Make her do it without PowerPoint. Actually, that might make it longer. Oh God. This really is a Sophie's choice.
And we'll go from there. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh Lord. She continues.
and the timeline.
Fair point. Shut up, Paul. No one wants to listen to your IT goatee knowledge. Not one of us.
Seconds. I'm gonna press play. And we just saw some movement at that top right portion of the screen, ladies and gentlemen. That is, do you want to back it up one more time? Just a few seconds. So I'll direct all of your attention to that top right corner. I think this was also to see, you could see a vehicle. Okay. So that would be the Porsche Cayenne. You can see it sort of going off the screen to the left, pulling into the street. And when the video continues to play for approximately another minute and 20 seconds, you'll see a flash from fire.
When I'm actively praying for crinkly wrappers. Oh my God, no, Kim, we're not doing this.
And then there's a gas fire by the garage. There was testimony from, I think it was John Lightbody, who confirmed gas is highly flammable.
I'll take a full-on sip for that. Like, guys, were you aware that, like, according to the expert, that gas is, like, super duper flammable? Liver, if you go first, take my brain with you.
The exact temperature or something at which gas
Like, I mean, like, I don't know, like, all the scienceology behind fire mania and such. I think it's called, like, kleptomania. Anywho, like, it's super, like, like, lightable. It's, like, really scary, okay? Because you could, like, light it and it would go whoosh. At this point, the conspiracy I really want to learn about is whoever set this defense up with Paul. Because can I just say, I don't know who did it. I don't know how much help you had, but next time you're planning a little kerfuffle for justice. Yeah, really. If your closing lasts long than again, MLS, can we cite her for crimes against humanity and, well, the theory of evolution, like forthwith and post haste? I think we all have a class action lawsuit against emotional damage and mental damage. I'm down one standard deviation of IQ, I'm pretty sure. Well, thank you, Felanos. Have a good evening and be safe going home. Yes, crimes against logic. It will be a felony in my America.
It's not a slow burning substance. The moment you light gas on fire, it flames up. So I don't know the explanation. And the state comes up with one.
If the state can figure out how fire burns, like if they're Scientologists. This is the defense's expert for fire.
Nice to meet you, folks. Fire Marshal Bill here.
Won't you come in?
Don't mind if I do.
Wow, a real fireman.
That's right, Princess. Well, it's National Fire Safety Week. I've been going door to door looking for fire hazards.
The only problem is I'm not sure legitimately that she did not watch In Living Color to try to figure this shit out. I'm almost quite terrified that she did. God. Let's learn more about fire from the defense.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's not coming from the witness stand. And that's what I mean when I say a theory. That's what I mean when I say the state.
Oh, I am so sorry, Major Mom. Update maintenance guy. He stroke, blood clot on brain, and the clot was removed. How ER? They don't know if he has a clot in the heart or an infection. So transesophageal echocardiogram, speech, and OT started. Well, I'm glad that they've started OT and speech as quickly, because the quicker you get those things going, in theory, I've heard the less the effects might be, or the quicker you might get as much function as you can get back. So I hope that works out for him, and I hope they figure it out.
Is theorizing, or they're filling in the blanks, or they're trying to fit the puzzle pieces in certain ways. There was no testimony from any witness in this case.
Wait, why did she change her skirt? I mean, I wasn't a fan of the plaid, other than the fact that maybe she'd get the hint to go at the speed of plaid. Like, go full plaid. Ma'am, you're the only person in the universe that it would be cool. You can go full plaid, because that's just 1.25 regular speed for the rest of us. But you at full plaid would be, again, somewhat functional for the rest of us. Like, how does fire even start? Like, we didn't even get that testimonial. I mean, what is fire? Who is fire? I am fire. Hot girl summer. I don't know, but it's never a good look when your or when your closing is so long you have to change wardrobe. God.
To determine what happens and what happened in this particular case. You are the sole fact finders in this case. The attorneys are absolutely allowed to comment on the evidence. However, you will make that final determination, and you look at the evidence. And you'll also learn, when I give you the law, that you'll also be allowed to make reasonable deductions based upon that evidence. But again, the attorneys are allowed to comment on the evidence. You determine on how you accept that information. Does everybody understand that? Yes. Okay. We'll continue with the summations of the defendant.
Now again, this ties into what was stated earlier about, are there two people? Where are they? It's dark out. What's happening? What we do know is at this moment,
It's like her brain is farting out these in real life narrative, or her internal monologue. Like, it's dark. What's happening now? I'm confused. I love that her speech has now contained her flow of thoughts and the rest of us. Like, yeah, it's dark. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? I don't think I see any relatives. Oh crap, did I go to hell? Did I die and this is my wake?
Paul Caneiro, and for that 1 minute and 20 seconds, is in the vehicle on the street with his family. We do know that he is not physically located at that garage when that fire started. We do know that Katie Caneiro said it was under a minute from the time that she saw her dad walking toward the garage and coming out of the car. The timeline doesn't make sense. Now, another issue in this case is, where is Jennifer's phone? You heard testimony from Detective Miglorisi initially that there were multiple phone extractions performed in this case. And that included Paul's phone, it included Pete's phone, and Tiffany Rivera, and a variety of other people that were mentioned at the time. And I asked Detective Miglorisi, and I asked Detective Pedrozello, and I think Mr. Murray might have even asked Detective Vogt, where's Jennifer Caneiro's phone? And there was no 911 call placed from the house. You heard testimony from, I think it was Mr. Abraham, that said when the Verizon power is cut, you lose internet, you lose Wi-Fi, you lose power, but you don't lose cell service. Self-service.
What in what?
Everyone, my vacation photos. I'm saving a ton of time by posting them to my wall.
Ooh, I like that one.
It's so quick. It's just like my car insurance. I save 15% in just 15 minutes.
I saved more than that in half the time.
Again, we are learning so much more with this than ever. But actually, the part that I want is, come on, internet.
Works. That's not how any of this works.
15 minutes for a quote isn't.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But you guys, I mean, have you thought about the fact that they haven't explained fire? Like, fire is a big part of this, like, trial.
This isn't coming from inside of the home. It's coming from outside cell towers.
Oh, holy shit. The call's coming from inside the house.
So again, I don't know what exactly they're going to say, but I do know that if the suggestion is that if one person is responsible for these murders and Keith is murdered outside of his home and there's gunshots that are heard 3 miles away practically, then we can imagine by Dennis Corpora, then we can imagine that Jennifer Caneiro would have heard them too. And why was there no 911 call? Where is her phone?
You stupid skank. Look, I have been as kind as I'm gonna be to you, but how fucking dare you? You victim blame Jennifer Caneiro. How effing dare you? You don't understand how acoustics work, so let me explain it to you, you dumb heifer. Their house was constructed mainly of concrete, which does have sound blocking properties. Her bedroom, the main, master bedroom, was all the way on the other side of the house. Now, yes, maybe she heard the shots. Maybe she was going downstairs to get a force multiplier to, what I wish would have happened was she, fucking Sigourney Weaver from Alien said, stay away from my daughter, bitch, and, pumped him full of lead. That being said, I am not the architect of this, but you did it with Keith, and I kept my mouth shut because you looked really dumb, but this is so gross. This is like, well, why didn't she call for help? I mean, she must have wanted to die. Bitch, you would be the first one to go down to the goddamn basement and fall in a horror movie. To call in heifers out.
And more importantly, since we don't have her phone, why don't we have her phone records? I questioned Detective Miglorisi, I believe, and also Detective Petrozello about that. And when I questioned Detective Miglorisi, who did the cell phone extractions, he was very informative. And he explained cell phone extractions are very helpful because there's a lot of information in them, right? You can get the content of all the text messages, you can get contact lists and phone logs and all sorts of data that people keep in their phones, their calendars, basically their lives. Now, without the phone, we can't access that information. But Detective Miglorisi confirmed what we can access with phone records is other limited information. Call logs, text message logs, not the content, but we can at least access who texted who and when, and cell site data. Cell site data tells us the general vicinity of where the phone is. Might not be an exact location, but it's a general location, general vicinity of that phone. And why is this important? Because you heard testimony from Katie Caneiro that she continuously called Jennifer's phone because it was ringing. She said she called the house phone once and it went straight to voicemail. That's because the power was cut. She didn't bother calling again because it wasn't working. She called Jennifer's phone repeatedly from the general time frame of 9:30 a.m. to noon, she testified. It kept ringing. Where was the phone? It was on somewhere. Why don't we have the phone records to know where? Was it in Coltac? Was it in a town outside of Coltac? Was it in a state outside of New Jersey? We just don't know. And Catherine Lacheese testified that when she tried calling Jennifer at approximately closer to 12:31.
Beach Girl, New England localities, I have noticed this, and I wasn't quite sure on New Jersey, but based on Massachusetts and New Hampshire, they do things a little differently. So the state or the defense gets to go first, and then the state has the last closing, but there isn't a rebuttal. So that's how they kind of deal with the state having the burden. The state goes last after the defense has put their entire case forward. I do kind of like this style better, if I'm honest with you. I think that the second bite at the apple just again seems a bit much for again the entity of the government having so much power disproportionately generally to a defendant. But I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I like to cosplay one when I get a little tipsy, though.
She couldn't remember on the stand, but she confirmed that when she gave her statement at the time, it was off.
Yes, she did. She changed her skirt.
People were calling and texting her. We would have records of that. We would have data. We would have cell information, cell site. What do we want to know?
You could have subpoenaed that. Why didn't you? Oh, because it would have looked effing terrible if Keith and Jennifer, if you brought that in, opened the door to Keith and Jennifer, because I'm sure Keith said a lot of interesting things about Paul to his wife. And you would open that door if you did that. But being a sneaky little butt monkey, you were like, I can just put out there that we don't know that, Hans Zimmer wasn't involved. Have you been to Nakatomi Tower? Do you believe that it is in fact a Christmas movie? I mean, at this point, I would rather listen to her defend Die Hard as a Christmas movie.
Not because Mr. Canerio didn't have the phone. He didn't have the phone. Where's the phone? They searched him. They searched his house 3 times. Remember that testimony from Detective Catalona? First it was, they took photos on the 20th. Then they searched on the 21st. 22nd was Thanksgiving, so they took a day off. They returned on the 23rd. They continued to search the home. And then they searched it again later that week. That Saturday on the 28th or something like that.
Or something like that. I'm sorry, haven't you had multiple years to have all of this detail and data down? Now, I'm not saying that, I would have a grasp of every date. Since I've gotten hurt and brain fog, I am not as good at dates and things like that. What I am good at is remembering timelines, putting facts together, and breaking them down into a simple story, a narrative. That is what your closing is supposed to be. You're supposed to incorporate, the points that you brought out, the good ones. Oh my God. I finally understand how Baker feels when anyone says, let's watch Lord of the Rings.
They didn't have Jennifer's phone. He never left police custody that day. We know that. So I would imagine in an investigation such as this one, where you have 7 years and 3 months to get phone records, if that's something that maybe we'd want to know. And no investigation is perfect, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that the investigation needed to be perfect. I'm not suggesting that every little I needed to be dotted, every little T needed to be crossed, because that's not the reality of life. We know that. But something more than what we have. Because not even wanting to know where Jennifer's phone is problematic.
No worries.
Mr. Caneiro is at his home with first responders and the police from 5 in the morning until noon when he goes to the police station with his family, and there's cell site information that says the phone is elsewhere. That would be relevant. That would be important to know.
And you could have subpoenaed this information again.
And in case the state suggests, well, maybe the fire burned up the phone. Well, I think that could be called into question. And here's why. Number one, these are photos of things things that were recovered from the rubble. You heard testimony that they tediously sifted through the debris. They piled it together and they sifted through it to see what they could find. And in the top left photo,
Ma'am, let me break this down for you real quick. If that phone was exposed to high heat, there's a little thing in there called a lithium battery. Now, I don't know if you know that because, I mean, you seem like a fire expertologist. But just like gas, lithium is actually really flammable too. So it could be just a little bit possible that the phone burnt the fuck up.
with code number 14, you can see the knife across the screen. That's where they found the knife. The next photo was in the kitchen area, and they found projectile. The bottom left, and 13, is where they found this item.
Oh, she almost tripped.
Amazing. They can find that. They can find the phone. They found the Roomba. That was in the worst area of the fire. Not in the basement, but in the foyer. Why would it be ringing? And why wouldn't Jennifer call 911? Is it because
I cannot with, again, the Jennifer and why didn't she call 911? Probably because Keith probably told her, don't call 911. They won't effing get here. If both of the Caneiro brothers were into gunsmithing, they probably talked to both of their wives about, if you think someone is breaking into the house, get strapped and, keep pushing the, boom, boom button until it's empty. I mean, I'm guessing.
there's a second person in the house at the time that Keith is outside? And where is the Ring doorbell camera from 15 Willowbrook? Now, I know we heard testimony from Detective Petrozello. He said he got a
Okay, I
warrant for
can't,
him.
you guys. I really can't. Her voice is hurting me.
That appears to be what it is.
Oh, dear God. Oh, God, no. What's...
To be in this mixture, or that is in this mixture, compared with the likelihood that it is not. And that is very different than random.
Oh, my God, no.
I mean, wouldn't we want more information? Wouldn't we want to swab more locations? Wouldn't we want to swab sooner? Wouldn't we want to swab the open door the day that this happened? Or
Oh, my God.
list, more. This is what I'm asking for.
Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus, take the wheel. This list. Ma'am, you know what? I'm a drink to you because I haven't laughed this hard in my fucking life in a while. And my legs have been hurting. And you know what? I haven't belly laughed this hard. So let's get the list of exoneration per Paul's defense. Number 1, bold in Comic Sans. Oh my God, you guys, I think it is in Comic Sans. Oh my God. Number 1, Paul loved his family. Number 2, the motive doesn't add up. Literally. Number 3, the investigation didn't follow the money. Number 4, police never investigated the 2 people seen / heard outside of Paul's house at 4:30 a.m. 5, police never considered a 2-person theory. Ma'am, just because it would take 2 people for you to do 10% of a half-assed job doesn't mean that even though Paul is mentally impaired, he's not impaired to your level. So you do understand that people are capable of doing a terrible job at trying to commit quadruple homicide, and it's not a conspiracy. Number 6, lack of forensic evidence and investigation. Number 7, timeline at 15 Willowbrook. Number 8, no blood in the Porsche Macan, except there was, and Creed alerted to the chair. Number 9, timeline at 27 Tilton. Number 10, where is Jennifer's phone? Number 11, where is the Ring doorbell camera from 15 Willowbrook? 12, forensic evidence points to Paul, but it doesn't prove, yeah, because DNA is still in question. We're just not, it's a brand new thing. We're still kind of working out this whole DNA thing. We'll get back to you when we crack it. I mean, it's not like it's the basis for a lot of DNA tests and or paternity test. Let's see here. 13, Paul's DNA was not found at the murder scene or on the knife. 14, Paul was cooperative with the investigation. 15, zero investigation into Corey Caneiro. 16, missing evidence. MLS Law, if you're on here, I dare you to do a list like this in one of your closings next case. I think it would be very, very effective. I think it would work. It's very persuasive.
And if there is any reason to doubt in this case, you don't need to find all of these to be reasonable doubts. You just need to find one. That's what our system requires. I just thought of another one.
Oh God, no, don't think.
Why was Keith? Keith is outside of his home. And if there's two people involved.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This is painful. I have never watched anyone having a more slow-moving, dim-witted epiphany in my life. It looks physically painful for her to have to think. She's like, oh, I just think. And then it's like a buffer. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus.
They looked at Paul's phone. There's no evidence of conspiracy with another person. If you find the evidence in this case compelling that there's two people, there's no evidence that Paul was involved.
No evidence, none whatsoever. You haven't spent 3 hours trying to correct all of the bad facts in your case for your defendant. You didn't spend 3 long, torturous hours doing that because there's no evidence. I mean, otherwise you're pretty terrible as a lawyer. If you knew, oh God, oh Lord Jesus.
All of these facts, all of the missing information, the lack of investigation, the missing evidence, and the remaining questions that have not been answered are reasonable doubts. Now there's 3 principles of law. I'm almost done. I'm gonna sit down soon. We talked about the presumption of innocence. I'm not gonna repeat that. We know what that is. I trust every single one of you know what that is. The burden of proof, we talked about that. It's on the state. So the last thing I want to talk about is standard of proof. What does proof beyond a reasonable doubt mean? In our justice system, we have sort of a scale of burdens, of standard of proof. The lowest level is probable cause. Probable cause means there's some evidence. So beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard, and it's all the way at the other end. If you find that there's some evidence in this case that Paul Caneiro is responsible for these crimes, you can't find him guilty. You have to acquit. Next is preponderance of the evidence. It's used in a lot of.
Jesus, did she have to look at her notes to go from probable cause to preponderance of the evidence? She couldn't remember these basic. I can't. State.
Cases. And it basically just means that instead of being here, equal poise, we're here. It's more likely than not, which could be 51.
Oh, like your boobs aren't equal. So just like that. Okay. I actually figured it out because I've been watching them as you've been walking back, and now I figured out why you wear really boxy tops. Don't worry. Most women don't have twins. They're always mostly cousins. So don't feel bad.
percent. And if you find that it is more likely than not that Paul Caneiro is responsible for these crimes, you have to find him not guilty. It's not enough. The next is clear and convincing evidence. Clear and convincing evidence. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you find that there is clear and convincing evidence that Paul Caneiro did this, you cannot find him guilty. You must acquit. It is not enough. If and only if the state can prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, which means you are so firmly convinced that there is no rational reason left in your mind, rational reason, to doubt, that is the only time that you can find someone guilty. There's a saying that justice is blind.
Oh God, no. Oh God, no. What in the American History X fucking high school speech class is this? No, we don't want your quotes. You have already been on here enough. I am already going to go to therapy and have to scream in the woods to get rid of the rage that you've caused. What in the name of filibuster is this?
The reason we say justice is blind is
because you gave her an aneurysm with your babbling. She had a stroke. She went blind. That's what happened. She used to be able to see. I mean, it wasn't 2020. It was more like 2045, and she had a bit of an astigmatism, but damn. Now she has a puppy. She's happier. But she still can hear you.
justice is fair, it's impartial, it's objective, and it is blind from bias and prejudice and assumptions and subjectivity. Justice. Sometimes we see the Lady Justice and she's holding the scales. Justice is blind because justice doesn't judge. It weighs. That's why we have the scales.
What in the Quaalude fever dream is this? Oh my God, she saw Uvalde, she saw the defense in there, and they did a really good allegory about Lady Justice and all the symbology involved in it and kind of foundational principles. And she's like, I can do it better. Oh my God, learn to walk in heels.
Where, as I said from the beginning, the allegations are harrowing. In a case like this,
Harrowing is what you're hoping you don't have to do after you lose your job. Two different words, both verbs.
we have to be free from judgment. We have to be free from bias. We have to be free from emotion. And we have to just weigh. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, when you follow your own jurors and you weigh the evidence in this case, and you weigh whether the state has in fact met its burden, whether we're here or here, I submit to you that they have not met its burden. I submit to you that they have not proven their case against Paul Caneiro beyond all reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt.
That is not the standard. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you the law as it relates to reasonable doubt. Only if the attorneys want to discuss the law, if it does not comport with what I tell you, it's what the law as I give it to you, not based upon what the attorneys say. Go ahead.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. A doubt. Mr. Caneiro is not guilty. He's innocent.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do, we just went at it.
If we went at it for this long, I mean, I feel like I should go to a doctor. I'm pretty sure if you have a migraine for longer than 4 hours due to stupidity, you should go to the ER. Thank you, tiny baby Jesus. State, please come in and tell everyone why she should be barred from ever practicing law again. State, I'm counting on you.
Let us know.
Talk logic to me.
I've been leaving this one on just so I can see. All right, we're ready. Just put that down just for a second.
50 Shades of Logic. State's coming in to give us all a break from pain. Does she know she's stupid? Like, does she know she's dumb? Or does she live in like a world where she really thinks she wowed us? I don't know. I have this terrifying idea that she will get fired, but then she'll get hired by Law and Crime to be an analyst. Or as I like to write it because I'm dyslexic and a smartass, anal and then ist. That was her I am sporadicus moment.
Guys all stretched out, ready to go? All right, good stuff. You can be seated.
All right.
We're back on the record. We stand in New Jersey versus Paul Caneiro. We will now have the summation from the state. Mr. Decker, when you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. Every time I give a summation, I tell myself I'm not going to respond. I'm going to stick to my script, the things that I think are important. But every time I give a summation, I always respond. I can't help myself. You heard the way I look at what we heard this morning from Ms. Mastalone and this afternoon. You heard four things, the way I look at it. We heard about the DVR. We heard about the ballistics. We heard about the DNA. And then we heard about the family dynamics, some of the testimony you heard from the defense witnesses. Now I'm going to talk about the DNA. I'm going to talk about the ballistics. I'm going to talk about the cameras. They're all very important. And I think it's important, I won't go any further than this, to note from the beginning just why you heard so much about the DNA and the ballistics and the cameras this morning. It appears to the state that we are trying
I think from rage.
very hard to explain away the DNA, to explain away the ballistics, and to figure out a way. Showing you pictures of police officers up above the refrigerator, trying to explain away as to how an extension cord could have came out or whether or not he hit a button and shut it off. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no explanation for him. We heard it for the first time today that it was actually him in that garage shutting that off. There is no explanation for shutting that off. We'll talk about the Wi-Fi later. When we talk about family, we heard the testimony, and I don't demean anyone who came in here and testified for Mr. Caneiro. That is their right. They're longtime family friends.
And that's my job.
They knew some of the dynamic, right? They saw some interactions between Keith and Paul, right? They saw some interactions between Uncle Paul and Sophia and Jesse. But all of them didn't hear what they didn't hear. They didn't hear about the issues between Keith and Paul. They didn't hear the phone call the night before. Keith may be emotional, ladies and gentlemen, and Paul may be level-headed, right? Keith was looking for an answer that he never got. Maybe he would have forgave him. Maybe. He forgave him before. The state has never said otherwise. Remember, relax. Mr. Weinstein said, Keith, go to sleep, relax. We'll deal with it tomorrow, right? Ms. Mastalone said that this morning, right? Keith tried to go to sleep.
I was wondering when this was going to bite her in the ass. Again, she really didn't catch up with the clue. And anyone who's watched this trial would pick up on the absurdity of he should have just gone to sleep. He did. And then his power was cut off and he was lured outside and he was shot 5 times.
He went to sleep either before midnight or after midnight on November 20th, 2018. He tried to go to sleep, but he was awoken. He was awoken because his power was cut. And he went to investigate it. He went to his basement. He went to look. He sees the generator should be on, right? Then he goes outside. But before he does, he sends a text message, and then another, and another, and another. To Paul, despite the anger, despite the issues, he still needed Paul for certain things. Remember, they even showed you an email during the course of the trial where Keith is asking Paul questions about his own electronics and the servers and the stuff in the basement. He needs Paul. And that's part of the frustration. Because remember, square one is 90-10. This is Keith's business. But Paul's got to do all this stuff. I think at least one witness told you about how, like, part of Paul's role is to do these things for Keith. So even after he's so upset with him, he's screaming at him, giving him the password, trying to figure out where the money went. He still texts him. But ladies and gentlemen, what kind of a man, what kind of a family man shuts off his cameras and drives to Colts Neck, New Jersey in the middle of...
Sir, yes, thank you. Finally, yes. He's such a great guy. Until, again, he, did all the Homer siding.
the night?
Allegedly, for now.
What kind of a man goes there, rips off an electrical panel, shuts off the switch on the generator to ensure, despite all of the electrical backups, that power is not coming on? Now, his phone, so he's not getting those messages, I don't believe, from his brother. He doesn't get that 318 message which says, I'm going outside to check the generator. What kind of a man, what kind of a family man, what kind of a brother lies in wait for his brother to come outside in the dark, only to be shot 5 times? Only to have your brother walk up, likely very calmly, place a gun to the back or side of his hooded head, and pull that trigger one last time. What kind of a family man is that? As if that was not enough, what kind of a man then chooses to go inside that house in the darkness to go and find his sister-in-law and 11-year-old Jesse Caneiro and 8-year-old Sophia Caneiro? Couldn't he have just stopped with his brother? At least he did that quickly and painlessly. What kind of a man does this? Now, one of the things that was brought up, kind of harped on, was the fact that why would someone kill for relatively small amounts of money, right? You know, the thefts and all that kind of stuff. Why would that happen? Well, one of the things that Miss Wallace told you in openings is that she said, we're here. Paul Caneiro is here because of the evidence, not because of the motive. I'm going to talk about it as I go, but the motive is...
Now, I really enjoy this. I like someone who's competent. I like a lawyer who can, again, he might need to look at notes for very specific things to keep the evidence, but this is all by rote. This is so incredibly refreshing after 4 hours of whatever the hell that just was. Oh, look, even the judge is like, yes, sir.
Learn later. That's not something that comes up. He's not suspected and arrested, etc., because of the motive. Lieutenant Petrozello said it best when he said, we followed the evidence. I'm a little sick of hearing about 2 people, which is sort of the first time today. I'm a little sick of hearing about Corey Caneiro. What did you hear about Corey Caneiro during the course of this trial? You heard he was a brother, okay? He's the youngest brother. You heard he's bald. You heard that he was a contingent beneficiary to the Keith Caneiro irrevocable trust, right? Him and Paul, 50-50. Now, what's interesting about that is what you never heard in this courtroom. And that is that Corey Caneiro had any clue that he was a contingent beneficiary to this trust. You never heard that. He knew about the trust because, as I pointed out this morning, he would complain to Corey a lot about Paul and his thefts from the trust. But Corey had no idea, based upon the evidence in this case, that he stood to gain either 50% or 100% or whatever was on that screen earlier. Now, there's some question during the course of the trial where I think it was intimated that maybe Paul Caneiro didn't know that he stood to benefit as a contingent beneficiary. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in 1999, Paul Caneiro signed that trust. He is the trustee. To argue that he did not know is ridiculous. But like I said, we're not here because of the financial motive. You did hear a lot of testimony, and it is important, but murder doesn't make sense. I'm not going to stand here this afternoon in front of 16 people who have spent a lot of time and a lot of attention and sacrificed a lot and tell them that because he got caught stealing somewhere probably under 75,000, we acknowledge, that was a good reason to kill. What I'm going to tell you today, and what Ms. Wallace told you earlier, is that it's not about what he stood to gain. It's about what he stood to lose. And we will talk about that. But I wanted to start off, now that I digressed enough, with some questions, like rhetorical questions, regarding the evidence in this case. And the first one I want to talk about is why would Paul Caneiro shut his DVR off at 1:28 a.m. in the morning?
Talk rhetoric to me, sir. The Socratic method? Rhetorical questions? Oh my God. If my brain could do a happy dance, it would.
We'll get there. Why then would he go down to his own basement and shut off the two Nest cameras, those two Wi-Fi cameras in the basement? Now, those are Wi-Fi, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it totally could have been like a squirrel that wanted to embarrass him. He didn't pull the plug. I mean, why is the state always so mean? It's just, it's a damn shame. It really is.
I think we all get that. What's in the garage, as we've heard a lot of testimony about, were hardwired cameras. I showed S418 at one point, the power box right above the QC DVR, the power for the QC DVR. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that Mr. Caneiro said to the police on scene that day when he was cooperative, okay? But now we're talking about Wi-Fi cameras. He's gone to his garage in the middle of the night when he's told police he's sleeping, and he's walked up, faces the camera, and all of a sudden it shuts off. If there's another explanation for what happened there, I have no idea what it is. But there's only one reason you would shut off your cameras 30 minutes before you drive to Cold Snack and kill 4 people. Now, we're going to talk about this as we go. But when we look at the two Wi-Fi cameras, okay, these are notifications from Nest, right? They're emails that Mr. Paul Caneiro received.
What is wrong with her damn eyeballs? Now, I know we're at 1.25, so we're going to slow this down to 1 because her eyeballs are fucking weird. Excuse my French, like I said. Lightweight. Also, look, we have done been subjected to this heifer all day. I only make apologies if you didn't have earbuds in. But okay, this is normal speed.
Notifications from Nest, right? They're emails that Mr.
What the crap is wrong with her eyes?
At 1:31 or shortly thereafter, which indicates that those two cameras were shut off at 1:31 a.m. in the morning. Now, the first one.
The fembot is malfunctioning. The fembot is malfunctioning. Paul, you might want to actually, Paul, if she happens to malfunction and take you out with her, allegedly in Minecraft, amen, hallelujah, and we can finish this mess today, right now.
has a specific area in the corner of the basement near the egress window where the fire started, right? And we'll talk about this specifically as we go. The second one is that basement work area, right? And that one, it actually captures his picture there when the electricity is shut off to that camera. That's the last thing that camera saw. Mr. Caneiro, shirtless like he just was in the garage, shutting off the cameras in his basement. Now, sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, but I did say I do it later. But the locations of those two cameras, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot escape from if you're Paul Caneiro in this case. We're going to talk a lot about evidence found in that basement. We're going to talk about that pile of clothing. Where was that pile of clothing found? Heads up, slide on the left, S273. Where are all the guns? Where's the gun locker? Slide on the right, S274. It's easy now to try to make up an excuse for why you would shut off your cameras when it really, really looks bad. Why, ladies and gentlemen? We talk about guns and whether he would use the one with the rails for the laser sight. I don't know why that is necessary. I don't know where the testimony with regard comes from. He chose to use the gun that he chose to use. He didn't need a laser sight on that gun. There is lighting outside of Keith's house. You saw it on the video when he's jumping up trying to shut it off.
Yeah, white man can't jump.
I don't know. Does he have a flashlight too? I don't really know. But I don't know what the point of the gun that is not registered to him with no serial number or whatever, why that has anything to do with this case. But we can talk about.
Ooh, gangster.
This gun. Now, this is not the murder weapon, okay? This is the other 6 out, right? This is the one that's found in Paul Caneiro's basement. Paul Caneiro's basement in the drawer, right? And when it was tested by Sergeant Clayton in the state police, one of the things he noted in his report is that in the chamber was this laser sight, laser bore sight, which is something that you use with this. It's a laser target, it's a laser light, laser target. It's a training system, okay? And we'll talk about like when this was used and why it's relatively important. But sometimes the murder weapon isn't the only weapon that actually matters. You know, we talked about it, they talked about it this morning, about how he's a firearms owner, right? Now, we talked about this during jury selection. I'm sure you all remember it. People have the right to bear arms in this country. We
Hell
all
yeah.
understand that. I'm not, and Miss Wallace, we didn't show you these guns to belabor the point that he's got a lot of guns, ladies and gentlemen, he must have done it. That's not the purpose. The purpose is this is a sophisticated individual who owns a bunch of guns. He's got a ton of ammunition. He's got gun cleaning supplies. He's got targets hanging up next to those. He's got rifles, everything. But he's also...
The power of Hank compels you. The power of Hank compels... Someone get me holy water. What the hell is going on with this heifer's eyes? Does anyone have one of those trank guns? I'm just saying. Like, I'm not saying, but I'm saying it looks like she's about to go feral. Like, she is this close to rolling her damn eyes again at the judge. Or saying, Bailiff is like, God, kill me now.
Someone who knows how to use it, right? He knows how to use this gun. And this is going to come in a little later.
He's got guns. He knows how to use them. I love ZZ Top.
Where we found this and why it's important. There's been a lot of talk about contamination and transfer and all these things that, you know, you kind of do when the DNA really hurts you. When your niece's DNA just happens to be found in your basement.
What in the name of Jesus? Okay. I need to, oh God, what time? I need to mark this. Timestamp. Jesus, take the wheel. Do we need to get a young priest, an old priest, and a Unitarian together? Possibly a rabbi? I feel like we need to call in all denominations and faiths, because I don't even know what level of Diablo we're dealing with here, y'all. This is some washed in the blood over here. I'm going to need you to avert them demon eyes away from me.
Do when the DNA really hurts you? When your niece's DNA just happens to be found in your basement? If Paul Caneiro was set up.
Sir, the Saint Gertrude dispensation of sarcasm in relation and retaliation to gross levels of stupid, we salute you and award you, sir. We don't always make fun of stupids, but when they have been grossly and offensively dumb, we must shame them. Make shame great again. Mo for president.
Why would that person, Corey Caneiro, whoever it may have been, why would they then try to destroy the evidence? They're trying to frame him. They somehow get his blood and DNA.
Actually, I changed my mind. MLS, I think I love her too. I require her to be the defense on every trial from now on. Look, I will never ever listen to her. I will never listen to her closings, but her rebuttal faces, holy shit. This has been the funnest I've ever had.
Gloves and jeans and shirts, his niece's hair on a scarf in that pile, but then they try to destroy it. If that makes any sense, I'll sit down right now. If Paul's set up, and we didn't talk about the barrel today at all, if he was set up, why would that person, Corey Caneiro, whoever it is, why would they then swap out the barrel to that other 6 barrel? Why would they want to make it difficult for law enforcement? Chris Clayton from New Jersey State Ballistics. Why would they want to make it difficult for him to make a ballistics match? It doesn't make any sense. And then, where did we find the backpack with the barrel? We found it in the Porsche Cayenne, Susan Caneiro's vehicle. The one that he happened to pull out of the garage, right? The one that they sat in at some point on Tilton Drive, and the one that they drove to the police department.
To be fair, I think we all wish Paul's mom or Paul's dad would have pulled out and just stuck with Keith and Corey at this point. You should probably wear earbuds for the rest of the trial.
Now, I don't think there's a chance in this world that he thought, A, he was going to end up at the Ocean Township Police Department, and B, that car, his wife's, was going to be searched that day. But if you're setting Paul Caneiro up, you're putting that backpack, the barrel, the silencer, whatever else is in there, all his worldly possessions, you're putting it in the Macan, aren't you? Why wouldn't you put it in the car that drives to Colt's neck and kills everybody? That's really not a great way to frame something. How would Corey or whoever have known that Paul Caneiro was going to pull the Cayenne out of the garage at 4:59 and 55 seconds or whatever it is? How would Corey know that? The answer is they wouldn't know that. And it doesn't make any sense. If Paul was being set up, why wouldn't there be more blood in the Macan? I'm not sure I understood the argument this morning. We didn't find any blood in the Macan, right? Okay. I think we all can agree, I hope, that Macan, I think it seemed to be conceded, that Macan drives to Colt's Neck in the middle of the night, and that Macan comes back at 4:08 a.m. So it's like we know the car is used. Whoever did this used that car. So whoever did this didn't leave a lot of blood. It doesn't mean that he didn't leave a lot of blood or someone else didn't leave. No matter who used the car to kill everybody, they didn't leave a lot of blood. So why, if you're trying to frame someone, why would Corey Caneiro be so careful to not contaminate the car? Because as you were told, and I'm going to tell you right now, you heard testimony first about how they didn't look for blood in the car, right? Despite there was the ALS and the blue light and all that kind of stuff that they can do, and they did, right? Maybe they didn't do it in the bathrooms. We'll talk about that. But then you heard when we called Trooper Cocky from the New Jersey State Police, right? We told you then that he brought his cadaver dog, right? Cadaver dog, obviously, is a dog that's trained to seek out and find evidence, odors of human remains. And the first place that dog went was in the Porsche Macan, and you heard that there was no indications inside, despite the thing about on his arm from giving blood that morning, which we didn't show you because we knew he gave blood. We're not trying to deceive anybody here. We knew what that was all about. But then the dog goes to the back to the storage area of the Macan and has a positive indication, right, for the presence of human remains. Now, you heard that it was tested and it was negative. It is what it is. Trooper Cochran told you that the dog is able to detect residual odors, right? And then the dog, if he wasn't clear that the dog kind of had a good nose for this stuff, the first thing they do when they enter the house is they find some blood on the door frame, right? And it turns out, actually, you know, they do inquire as to where the blood came from. And it turns out it came from one of the firefighters, Sean Ensign. Got a buck swab, and ultimately was tested, confirmed to be his DNA. Creed, the canine, then is taken off lead throughout the house. And ultimately, nothing upstairs, nothing on the main floor. And then he goes down to the basement, down the stairs, through the left door, immediately into the unfinished side of the basement, where we saw that camera. But you didn't see what happened. Right? That dog hit for the odor of human remains, which made a lot of sense once they looked at the pile and they saw the blood and the jeans and the scarf and the shirts and the gloves with his niece and his nephew's DNA on it. So it's not like they didn't look. It actually took the dog to make sense of that. So why, if we're framing someone, are we being so careful? You've been told a lot about what wasn't done or why they didn't follow the money, or why they didn't do this or look into Corey. But the evidence that you have, the stuff that they're really trying to get out of, trying to get away from, they didn't shut off the DVR. Man, it's transfer evidence. Oh, the ballistics, I don't know. The ballistics is pretty conclusive, I think, based upon the testimony. I'm not sure exactly where that's going. But what do these things tell you? And they tell you investigatively that Paul Caneiro did this. It was discussed that the state has the burden of proving this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Absolutely. That is
Post-punk mama. Now, or I'm sorry, look, to be very fair, I am a little tipsy. Anywho, the defense was intolerable, but this heifer's eyes are trying to escape her body. They do not want to be linked with this bitch at all. They have filed a separate LinkedIn and a different like, you know, Facebook profile. Like her eyes are trying to escape her head. They don't want to be affiliated with her brain either. But it is hilarious. I keep I keep trying to like force the power of Hank to compel her, but I do either that or her reptilian mask is I did kind of wonder. I mean, so I was going to have Dave call the courthouse and let them know that the fembot is malfunctioning. But honestly, if only Paul is hurt, is anything of value really lost, allegedly, in Minecraft? I mean, I don't know how you'd get it out of the carpet, though.
our burden. Ms. Wallace and I, we readily accept that. That's the way the system works. But it does work both ways, right? You have to understand what standard means and what reasonable doubt means. It's not just one little thing that wasn't done. It's an honest and reasonable uncertainty as to the defendant's guilt. But there is none, ladies and gentlemen. It was not set up. You heard a lot of testimony recently about how he was a smart guy, he was a tech guy, meticulous, level-headed, et cetera, et cetera. And in the opening, and again this morning, Ms. Massalone said to you, and I get it, she's doing her job. She said,
Objection.
that was wrong. What she said was, why would Paul Caneiro do this, but then lead the police to his house by setting a fire? And the answer to that is, he was trying to destroy the evidence. He wasn't leading the police to the jeans and the scarf and all that evidence. He was trying to destroy it. It just didn't work. You heard from John Lightbody, the expert who did the origin cause at 27 Tilden. Remember he showed that picture in the dining, in the family room, and he actually kind of marked out a line of demarcation, and he said, yeah, this is basically where the firefighters were able to stop this fire from spreading. Because you saw the fire, and you're going to see it again today. I mean, that fire was no joke. It's just that a bunch of people, including Chris Sorrentino, got there really quickly and were able to contain it. That fire was supposed to destroy the evidence. But understand, like, he's a smart guy. He's tech savvy. He does some smart things in the beginning, I think, maybe before he does all this. You know, he plugs his phone in. And all.
Wait a minute. I need to try this. Okay, let me see. what the hell is this woman doing? I can't figure out. Is someone honest to God, is she I am legitimately trying not to be funny here. Does she have a history of epilepsy or anything? Because I know sometimes, different kind of seizures can look like a funny twitch or something. So in all seriousness, does she have a history of that? Because this is concerning. And I'm a total B word. Like, I don't like her to the point of I just don't like her, but I don't want to see her have an actual factual medical issue.
Track phones, that sort of thing. That wasn't dumb, right? That was a pretty smart move. It's okay. But the problem with things like this, the problem with murder, especially when you kill your niece and your nephew, is that no matter how ruthless the crime is or your intent is, you still never know how you're going to react after something.
Well, to be fair, we do have it at 1.25. No, she wasn't doing it until the state started talking and blowing apart her case. So that might be. And again, if it's an actual medical thing, I'm sorry I've been making fun of it, but at this point it is coming across as a petulant child who doesn't want to hear dad explain why we can't just use the credit card.
Like that. I mean, none of us know. He just annihilated his nephew and his niece. And then he's got to get the hell out of it. We'll talk about the timeline. 6 minutes. We'll talk about that. Not a problem. But he's now left Colt's neck after doing what he did and setting the fire and cutting the Verizon line. And he's driving home and they're asking, well, why didn't he get rid of the evidence? He could have thrown it here. He could have thrown it there. He's not thinking rationally, first of all. And second of all, there's one thing that you really need to understand. These guns, these 2 6 hours, okay? You heard they're registered to Paul Caneiro. He is a lawful gun owner. So this and that and all the other ones we showed you, they're on file with the state of New Jersey. Okay? They're registered firearms. So if he ditches this gun, the first thing the police are going to do in Ocean is go, hey, where's the 6 hour? 229. So it's not that simple. So he can't get rid of the gun, and he tried to get rid of the DNA. It just didn't work. I mean, he didn't call 911, right? Caitlin Caneiro, his daughter, called 911. He didn't call. You think he wanted that to not be destroyed? Think about that, okay? It's disingenuous, like a lot of the other things when he was cooperative that he said to the police that morning. It's kind of like not wearing shoes, right? It's kind of screaming like, hey, look at me. I was asleep. Hold on. But just imagine driving home after doing all that, and you got to get home quickly, right? You got to get home quickly because there were 6 gunshots. So Lord only knows who's calling 911. So he's got to get the hell out of there. And he's driving home, and he chooses to bring the evidence home and set him on fire. He's got that voice in his head, right? He's thinking about that special bond with Jesse. He's thinking about, God, what I just did to my niece. It doesn't necessarily lend itself to being smart and doing smart things.
I very much like this use of emotion to explain again the sloppiness where some parts of this plan were in all fairness to Paul, very cunning and seemingly well thought out. But I think that because the state has been so sparing, because they have been so respectful, that this use of emotion I find less manipulative. And I think my tolerance level is very low for emotional kind of manipulation, especially after Uvalde, especially on behalf of the state.
It lends itself to sloppiness, which is exactly what happened here. And it wasn't like he led us to the evidence. He tried to get rid of it. Now, when we talk about what happens in Colt's neck, we talk about the relationship between Keith and Paul, Keith being his younger brother, and the way that he executed him. The years of I would submit to you somewhat jealous because Paul Caneiro's mind, he's putting in a lot of work into square one and equal. I think you saw that from the messages. And I think he feels underappreciated. He's not getting his share and he's doing all these things for his brother. One can imagine how that can build up. One can somewhat, I'm not excusing it, trust me, but one can somewhat imagine the brother on brother. Oh, the kids. I can't give you a motive, financial, otherwise. I can't come up with a motive that would ever justify him or anyone doing that to Sophia and Jessica and Jennifer. So I believe they're overstating the motive, the financial motive. But remember, he did stand to lose a lot. And again, I've already said some of that stuff. I apologize. I'm not an expert with PowerPoint. I'll try my best not to repeat myself. But one of the other things that I didn't say, I talked about the 911 call, and that's Dennis Kapoor, right? We're going to listen to it, at least to some extent, at 3:30.
No, Major Mom. Again, I've noticed it more in New England localities, New Hampshire, New Jersey. Well, not New Jersey, Massachusetts, and then I think we did have a New Jersey trial, or Baker did. For closings, the defense goes first, and then the state closes and has the final word. I do think I like that setup better than the state going first, defense, and then having a rebuttal. I find that to be more leveling, but I don't know. There could be arguments for or against that are very tied to individual state and locality statutes and constitutions. But I find as a lay observer, I think it seems much more fair with all of the advantages the state has that they have the final word, sure. But kind of sandbagging, I don't like it.
And ultimately, there was a lot of testimony. When did you call? And remember, he was lying in bed. And ultimately, he says he called. He heard it about 2:26. We know the call's about 3:30. But also remember, he's got to get out of there quick, and that's why, to a certain extent, he's very sloppy. And that's why he doesn't necessarily get rid of certain things in certain places. Because not only do we have the potential for someone calling 911, which actually happened, but we also have really no reason to believe that Paul Caneiro, when he started the fire in the basement, and he meant for it to smolder, right? You know, like, he set it fire. I mean, he was in a rush. He just killed everyone. He's about to cut the line. We know there's a fire. They're not contending it, but it's like, how did it start? There's a lot of alcohol in there. There's torch strikers. It doesn't really matter. But what we know from the evidence is that it took hours for that to build up and to grow and to become what it was, which ultimately kind of happened when the Colts Neck police arrived in the fire. They started opening other doors. You saw Dr. Boris opening doors. So, like, Paul Caneiro's not expecting that this is not going to be like a reported fire soon. He's got to worry about the fire call because why wouldn't it go up quickly? I mean, it didn't, but why wouldn't it? And then he's got to worry about the 911. What's important to note is that this case is not about any one piece of evidence. I'm not saying convict him of murders because he shut the camera off. I'm not saying it because the car leaving in the middle of the night. I'm not saying it because I'm going to tell you that Paul Caneiro's outside that garage door in Colts Neck at 2:51 in the morning. I'm not going to tell you to convict him just because of the DNA or even the ballistics. It's a combination of all these things. It's easy after 7 years to say he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But it's hard to say in this case, impossible, I suspect, to say that the detectives, Petrozello, Zarillo, Brady, Weisbach, that they didn't follow the evidence. Like, what did you ever hear that should have said to those guys, hey, we should get Corey's financial records. Hey, we should look closer at Elisa's phone, which they only looked at for 2 days. There's nothing there. We didn't get his DNA, ladies and gentlemen.
Objection. So there's nothing there. They didn't look at it.
Overruled.
I didn't mean the phone. I didn't mean the phone. I was talking about there was nothing. I'm sorry, Judge, to cut you off.
Yeah.
Can I clarify?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, what I was trying to say was that there was nothing there that made Corey Caneiro look like a suspect. Like, you've heard nothing other than he's got a motive because he's a contingent beneficiary of a trust that was signed in 1999 when he was a lot younger. And he doesn't know about. That's all you've heard. And interestingly enough about that is the fact that they're arguing to you that Corey's got this motive, right? He's got this financial motive. He stood to gain 1.5 million or 3 million, Slayer statue, whatever it may be. But then in the same breath, they're saying that our motive for Mr. Caneiro to do this isn't good. You can't have it both ways. I mean, it's the same motive, right? It's just that Corey Caneiro has that one motive, and then Mr. Paul Caneiro has all the evidence stacked up against him, the motive because of the trust. And also, oh yeah, he stole from his brother 19 times in 2018. Did you hear any evidence that Corey Caneiro ever stole $1 from Keith? Did you hear Keith call Paul, or did you hear Keith call Corey and say, Corey, where's the money? What'd you do with it? Why are you taking my money? You didn't hear that. So you don't get someone's DNA. You don't go get DNA just because. Like, you talk about family relationships, right? Dr. Reich, and we'll talk about it. I'm getting ahead of myself, but we'll get there. We heard from Dr. Reich about, like, allele sharing, and we all share DNA, and we actually share like 99.8% of the family, but that's why we look at certain places. And we know Keith and Paul shared about 72%. But like, all of a sudden, Dr. Reich just throws a column on there that says Corey Caneiro with a bunch of question marks. Yes, we don't have his DNA. But why should we have his DNA? Like, we don't have Susan Caneiro's DNA, right? We don't have Caitlin's DNA. We don't have Marissa's DNA. I mean, could they have shared alleles? Yeah, of course they could, because they're family. I mean, when you did the math, Jennifer Caneiro actually shares like 38% of DNA with Paul Caneiro, and they're not even family. So I don't say that because I'm telling you that Miss Caneiro and her daughters had anything to do with this, to be clear. I'm just saying that it's no different than Corey Caneiro. What if there was a fourth brother? You don't just ask for DNA and send it out because somebody stands to gain something that they don't even know about. Because let's just put it in perspective, what we're talking about here. The Keith Caneiro irrevocable trust. Keith dies, money goes to Jen. Jen dies, money goes to the kids, right? The kids die, as Mr. Cardenas told you, it actually goes to the grandkids if they exist, right? Because remember, when this was created, the kids didn't even exist. Jen and Keith weren't even married yet. You think about all the things that actually have to happen before either Paul or Corey could ever see a dime. It wasn't designed for them. Mr. Cardenas told you that. It was designed to benefit the children. That was Keith's intent. So it's a pretty far-fetched argument to make that we should have accused Corey of murder because he stood to gain $1.5 million that he didn't even know. Investigation, okay? It's not just about the things I told you, the DNA, the ballistics, and the cameras. They're all very helpful. And I just want to put something in context, because we're here 7 years later, right? And you got to sit here, we put witnesses on, and then they put some witnesses on, and you got to hear testimony. Lieutenant Catalona comes in, he says, I found this, and that. And Detective Mahoney comes in, he says, I watched this camera. But like, that didn't just happen, right? Like, that's part of an investigation where, it starts at 27 Tilden, and then you go to 15 Willowbrook. That seems not secure, and then the detectives have to start digging, right? And they wind up finding cameras. And they don't find any on one side of Tilden. I don't know what to tell you. That was testified to that they looked. Did they document? A lot of times people don't document things that they don't find. But they looked. And what we found was 30 Tilden and 308 Green Grove. And it's interesting because I want you to try to keep in perspective that, like, there's a fire, and then the investigation starts. And then you find out about murders in Colts Neck. And then you start looking at addresses on Willowbrook. And then you start looking on Tilden. And you kind of find what you find. And again, today, you heard Ms. Massalone say that that's Mr. Caneiro in the garage shutting off his cameras. But, like, that's not something that's ever been acknowledged. And you didn't hear the detectives testify that was Paul Caneiro shutting off his cameras. That's for you to do. But now I think, obviously, it's clear that Mr. Caneiro is the one who did that. But I want you to keep in perspective. This is a build-up. It was just like, hey, this guy's the homeowner. We got to suspect that he burned his house down. He was treated like a victim.
Does anyone know how to make a little animation of her face? Again, I'm sorry if this is a medical thing, but at this point, it looks like a petulant child who's never been made to sit in the discomfort of having their worldview shattered. I don't know what kind of college you went through that you think that you can do this. I thought law school was all about getting your idea, learning to sharpen your rhetorical skills, learning to maybe not opposing arguments or opposing viewpoints, but at least be able to argue them and understand them. Dear God.
At 27 Tilden in the morning, right? it wasn't until a certain point when they started to go, hey, we got to look at this guy. And they probably didn't even realize at the time how suspicious and interesting the things were that he said to them about the cameras and the DVR and like what color's the box and all that kind of stuff. They don't realize that right away. And then we start to look at things that are found that maybe like, they didn't really talk about it, but like when we talk about ballistics and why ballistics is important, I think it was on cross-examination, Sergeant Clayton, the ballistics unit, got asked about Fiocchi ammunition and they started asking, is it rare? Yeah, it's rare. I mean, but think about how we go from one place to another. It's not like zero in, tunnel vision, like they're arguing. It's like, hey, we found a bunch of bullets. We found a bunch of shell casings at 15 Willowbrook. And they just all happen to have the same head stamp. They all happen to be the same caliber. And then they all happen to get sent to the New Jersey State Police. And ultimately, they all match each other, right? And then we'll talk about those cross comparisons, about how these are linked to guns and barrels. But Fiocchi ammunition, like you heard, it's rare, right? It happened to be in his basement, a lot of it. And it happened to be at the crime scene in Colt's Neck. Same ammunition found at the crime scene as his basement. It's just another thing that's just not a coincidence. When we talk about rarity again, it's not as rare, though, as some of those likelihood ratios, some of those random match probabilities you saw with respect to Sophia Caneiro as well as him. Like I said, one of the things that I hope to accomplish, one of the things I hope to do justice to today is to make all 16 of you, now you probably already get it because you've been so patient, just understand that no one zeroed in on Paul Caneiro. Ocean Police didn't respond to 27 Tilden that morning, looked and just said, this guy doesn't have shoes on, he must have done it, right? He didn't even know. You want to know about swabbing his hands or gunshot residue analysis on his hands? You saw the pictures when the pictures were taken of his injury. It's like 12 plus hours after the shooting occurred in Colt's Neck. Like, you're never going to do that 12 plus hours later. He's been to the bathroom, all kinds of things. He's washed his hands, those sorts of things. So just understand, like, if they knew at 5 o'clock in the morning that there was a house on fire in Colt's Neck and Keith Caneiro was dead on the front lawn, they probably would have swabbed his hands, right? But like, they can't control what they don't know, and it's a process, right? Investigations are a process. So,
Okay, I don't know, sir, whoever put that ring on her finger, I want you to imagine for the rest of your life having an argument and having a when she is yelling or when you are telling her the truth, like when you're saying, babe, math doesn't work like that, and no. You understand that these are the faces that you are going to see. Now, if you can live with that for the rest of your life, then God bless you and Godspeed, good man. Valhalla awaits. But if you can't run now, move to Guam, change your name, and grow a mustache.
now we're here. Now we're getting to the point where police respond to 27 Tilden Drive for that fire. Okay, it's about 5:02 in the morning. They arrive there. And the first person on scene, I mentioned him already, is Chris Sorrentino, who you heard from. And Chris Sorrentino, like Ms. Mastalone said, lives right around the block. So he's in bed, he gets the page, and all of a sudden, he jumps in his truck. He's got a take-home car, lights and sirens, because he's actually the fire mechanic for the town. But he says he jumps in his car after he got dressed quickly, and he makes a left, makes a right, makes another right, makes a right on Tilden Drive, finds the house, pulls up, parks, and goes up to investigate. Now, Chris Sorrentino, I would submit to you, is important to this investigation because he's the first one there. Okay, he told you about how it's dark and that ultimately he gets out of his truck. He doesn't have anything, doesn't have any like fire extinguisher or anything. He just said he's got his radio. And he goes straight up to the front door of 27 Tilden Drive. Okay, as he's going up the lawn, he said someone yells, "Everybody's out of the house." And he turns around and ultimately it's Mr. Caneiro and family in the Cayenne on Tilden Drive. Sorrentino then goes inside to investigate, and he realizes when he looks through the living room window that the fire's outside, goes back to his truck, probably pretty quickly, right? And he's grabbing these two water cans, right? Basically like little fire extinguishers. And now he goes to the back of the residence, to the back right, next to the gas meter, and he attempts to start to extinguish the fire with what he has. Now, you saw this previously, and we're just gonna watch it pretty short. But this is ultimately what we're seeing upon Sorrentino's arrival to the backyard and the police have arrived. It worked last night. Now, one of the things though, in this video, what you're going to see is this is when you see Chris Sorrentino, you see what he's wearing. He's wearing dark clothing. He's wearing like jeans and a hoodie. He's got these water cans. And ultimately when he gets to the back, and I think at this point he's basically now going to get water cans 3 and 4. And you see from this angle, and basically where this is taken from is a body worn camera of one of the officers. And he's standing near Marilyn Klein to neighbor's driveway. Remember, there wasn't any cars in the driveway yet. But what you see here is basically one of the first responders shining a flashlight, right? What they're shining a flashlight at ultimately is that fire that you can see there. It's probably about 5:05 now a.m. You see that fire in the rear of the home. I say that because it's been argued extensively this morning and in the past that we ignored Heather Capp and we ignored Jonathan Harrington's information, the 4:30 thing. I'm going to say first things first. You don't tell people what to say. I think that's clear based on the investigation. You don't try to change times. I never asked either one of them during their testimony, are you sure it was 4:30? No, because that's what they said. It's not right for us to try to correct things that we know are incorrect, but it's not their recollection. So ultimately, I would tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we followed the evidence. We evaluated, the detectives evaluated what they said, what they saw, what they heard, and they came up with a conclusion. Now, Ms. Pastalone summarized Ms. Capp's testimony. But what I would suggest that you keep in perspective is what is extremely clear. I'm not here telling you that she didn't say 4:30. She did. But what she's very clear about in her first statement to the defense investigators, then to the police, and then in trial was that she hears something. She's in bed, right? It's 4:30, whatever, 5 o'clock in the morning. She's lying in bed and she hears something. And based upon that, she goes, gets out of bed, she says something to her husband, and then she goes and looks out the window. And what she's never deviated from, and she did not deviate from here, is that when she looks out that window, first of all, it's dark. Second of all, she sees the guy by the front door, and she sees the guy pointing the flashlight over by Marilyn's driveway. And she does see people run back to the street after that. We'll discuss that. But when I asked her, when you looked at the guy with the flashlight, did you look where he was pointing the flashlight? Yes, immediately. And what did you see when you looked there? And what she saw was fire. So people are wrong about times. It happens all the time. And I'm not saying it makes her a bad person. I'm not saying she's lying. I don't think she is. I think that that's what she thought at the time when someone came and spoke to her. But she's very clear that one of the first things she sees is a flashlight and a fire. And you know what time that fire started. It shows up on the 19 Oxford Drive cameras at just about 4:57. That's when it first becomes visible. And I'll show you in the presentation at some point exactly what you can see. You remember there was some daytime footage from 19 Oxford. And you can count. We counted the windows. 1, 2, 3, 4 windows on top 20. And then you see kind of the line of demarcation. And when you look at a picture of the house, like a regular picture of the house, you see what you can see on the cameras. And you can see like just about where the fire started. So we know that fire starts at about 4:56, 4:57. And it was talked about as a gas-fed fire. I think Lightbody talked about it. But gas-fed fires, they go. And that's why we saw that large flash. And then it subsides. But Heather Capp is just wrong about the time. Jonathan Harrington, he actually doesn't see the fire until he goes outside. But he doesn't even look. He doesn't get out of bed. He just hears what he hears. He hears voices. And then he basically eventually gets up, changes, goes downstairs, and makes the observations of the fire. And first responders are already there. So I get it. I get the argument. I'm not arguing with it. I'm not telling you that they shouldn't make the argument. I get it. But these aren't mystery men, ladies and gentlemen. These are first responders. It's Chris Sorrentino. And I think I may have said it already today. But what I would point out, and I think it's obvious, is that if Corey Caneiro or whoever did whatever he did, and then he came back to 27 Tilton Drive, and he set in a fire, like at 4:30 in the morning, he'd be knocking on the door. Why would he be trying to wake people up? It doesn't make any sense. The only person who went to the door, the first person who went to the door, was Chris Sorrentino. And that's what Heather Capp saw. And then she saw the assistant fire chief who was second, pulled his truck into the driveway. And then we have the patrolman, that video, you've seen it. It's the flashlight and it's the fire. And that's exactly the time, just about when Heather Cap starts watching what she sees. Now, one of the things, I plan to talk about it, but Ms. Mastalone was discussing the fire, the flash of fire at 501, it's about 501-16, 501-26, 27. And one of the things she said, like, Paul Caneiro couldn't set that fire, right? Because he pulled the Cayenne out of the garage. Now, we showed you that. We know what time Paul pulls the Cayenne out of the garage. We're going to talk about it. But to argue that he's outside in the street with the family, at now it's about 501 and change, right? So then the same people that are there at 4:30, the same two guys, are there at 32 minutes later, and Paul and his family are already out of the house, sitting in the car in the street, and then these people are sticking around to set a fire. That doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. I'll talk to you about how that fire got set as we go forward. I think when you watch that video, you see movement around that time on those cameras. You know, Ms. Messalon argued that Mr. Caneiro was in the car with his family the entire time. I think she even said that the state told you they were in the car together. They were in the car together. We didn't tell you exactly what point in time he pulled the car out, parked it, and every single person went into the car. Because, you know, Mrs. Caneiro went in, she got the dog leashes, right? You know, she got shoes and all that kind of stuff. So, like,
are you kidding?
It's not like everybody's around. Like, it's easy enough to be like,
For the love
hey,
of
I got the car out. Oh, I left the garage door open. Let me go back over there. Or maybe he lit something when he was pulling before he pulled the car out. It just didn't catch right away. I mean, the fire, obviously, I guess it did. I guess there is something in this combustion. We heard about that in rolling out fire. But it wasn't someone else. I mean, Mr. Caneiro and his family didn't see anyone else, right? They never told the police that day that I was over by the garage or I wasn't over by the garage, someone was over there. So, like, we'll talk about that in a little more detail when we look at the video. But we know, based upon the investigation, it wasn't like it wasn't challenged or investigated. But we know that Heather Cap and Jonathan Harrington saw the first responders because we know what time the fire started. And they're crystal clear that her first observation, she sees the fire. Remember, she's on a diagonal across the street. She's actually kind of looking into the back. The fire's actually, by her testimony, the fire's not even above the roof. It's just down. She's actually seeing it from an angle. So that I suspect that's not something that was ignored. It wasn't ignored. And it also is not something where we told people what to say or to change their story. Because that's not the way these things work. Right? And also, I'll get to the point where I'm able to show that video. Can we play that video? Thank you.
You have to switch the table. Is that what you're asking?
Hey, is everybody out of the house? All right, once again, Jeanette.
See this area right here, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Cap house. And you heard testimony about where the house is. Across the street is the Harrington house. He can only see the front of the house, so he's got to see the fire above the roof. Heather Cap is looking right here. I just want, if it hasn't been made clear yet, just to see how dark it is. Because there's, you know, that whole thing about baseball hats or whatever, flat caps. I don't know what to tell you. To be honest with you, I don't know what that means. I have no idea. But I can tell you that from her window, like, this is what she sees. She sees lights, and she sees movement, and she hears things. And this is what they're doing.
Nobody's here. That's not gonna help.
Can we go back to this table? Sorry. So when we look at that photo, we just talked about it, but there's 4 windows up here. So when we look at camera 7 from 19 Oxford, this is like the cutoff right here. Right about here, you'll see it from the video. So you're seeing the fire evolving in that classic like linear formation right around here. So you may not see the first spark of fire, but you're seeing the fire basically shortly after it started. So this is what the police are looking at in 27 Tilton. This is what they arrived to once the fire is ultimately extinguished. And here we're looking at that basement window, right? And what's important to note here, we can see the hoses. It's kind of like we saw the hoses in the other pictures over by the jeans and everything in the fire. But the fire starts right here and ultimately travels into the basement. And this is right about where you find that pile. So if there's any doubt that someone was trying to destroy the evidence in the basement, I think it's pretty clear when you look at it from that perspective. Here we see an electrical panel in 27 Tilton. The one thing you should note, and I know you guys are long become experts on electrical panels and generators, but this has a little JCP&L tag here, right? This is what happens. This is what it looks like when the power company actually comes and pulls the meter. Okay, they keep the case on, the door on, and they put that little lock there. So obviously, you'll all recall the gas can. One of the first things that the officers, once they made their way out to the driveway side, 27 Tilton, they find that red gas can. And I know you saw the video where one of the officers, I think it was Gronkowski, Leonard Redmond, actually extinguished it right away. It's a small fire by the time they get there. You saw it, you saw the way it flashed out. You saw ultimately the way it's going to connect with the Macon. There was some cross-examination at some point about, well, didn't Paul Caneiro tell the officers that, that he didn't know where his gas can was, he thought it was in the shed. I say that because it seemed like that cross-examination was like intimating that he was actually being honest about it. Because he is asked a lot of things by the officers.
No, it didn't.
You know about the DVR and stuff. But they asked him the last time he was in the shed, and he couldn't remember. And he said he had no knowledge of this gas can out here. I mean, I'm not saying that's the smoking gun. What I'm saying is, it's not like if he left the gas can there, he's just going to say, oh yeah, I left the gas can over there like a couple minutes ago. So just for purposes of understanding the cross-examination in that regard. Because when we look at context as to what he said, he said he doesn't know where his gas cans are. He thinks they're in the shed. But he also said, let's just keep in context, that he told the police that morning that he was sleeping. The last time he was in the basement was at 4 p.m. the day before. We know these things aren't true. His daughter said she never saw him when she got home that night because he was upstairs in his bedroom. He was. He never came down, right? That doesn't mean he was sleeping. Obviously, there was a bunch of cross-examination, a lot of testimony about the shed and the footprints, and what ultimately they found, and there's another 2 gas cans on the other side of the shed. But here's that little space here where the gas can that was found by the driveway could fit. It's just something that, stuck out to the officers at the time. It didn't mean that Mr. Caneiro was the one who took it out of there. It was just something that was noted at the night. But let's talk about what Mr. Caneiro says upon police arrival. He said the last time he was in the basement, like I just said, was 4 p.m. the day before. Now, that's not true for a variety of reasons. One of which is when he shut off the camera by his workbench where all the guns were. You saw that happen at 1:31 a.m. He's on camera when the camera shut off. So we know he's in the basement at 1:31. He says a lot of things, and this is why I think maybe even makes it more important. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation today in summation by the defense about the cameras, but also Paul Caneiro couldn't figure out what to tell the police that morning about the cameras. He tells the fire marshal, Craig Flanagan, that his cameras weren't working. He tells one of the ocean officers that he's been having trouble or having issues with stuff in the garage. He tells detectives Brady and Weisbrot that he can't remember if he turned his cameras on. And then he tells him the thing about the cameras causes Wi-Fi to run slow. There's a big difference between the types of cameras. Hardwired, the only effect the Wi-Fi has, and there was testimony about this, is if they want to watch the app. If he wants to watch the app on his phone for his QC DVR, he could do that, and he could do it through Wi-Fi on his phone. But the Wi-Fi has no effect on that. He shut it off. And it's really, really a damning piece of evidence. Can we take a short break?
Sure.
I apologize.
Can you just move that? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. I'll give you about 10 minutes.
No, he was making sense. It was balm for my brain. It didn't hurt as much anymore. Don't make us take a break.
Appreciate it. So we're just talking about the things that Paul Caneiro said to police the morning of the fire, 2017. Obviously, these videos and these interactions, they're before police develop any sort of suspicion of Paul Caneiro, right? All these conversations are before they see him shutting off the DVR in the garage. They're all before his car leaving. So these police officers and these detectives, they're just trying to figure out, like, if he knows anything about what started the fire. We see cameras in your house. Like, it might be nice to see what we see on them, right? Because we know, we'll probably talk about it, but you all got a sense of there's two cameras by the driveway in the garage, one in the front and there's one in the back. So, any officer is going to find out, do they show anything? So what happens when those conversations happen?
Jason J., you do realize she's going to be insufferable at sentencing. Not that I'm Nostradamus or Mostradamus. I'm just saying she'll be insufferable, and so will his family and friend brigade. I hope that they are shamed after this closing into not showing up.
Yes. Where's all the DVD stuff for the cameras and everything in the house? In the garage. In the garage? Yeah. Where in the garage at? Walk in the garage and it's all the way up top to the left. Up top to the left? You have the running right now? I've been having problems with stuff in the garage. You've been having problems with stuff in the garage? Yeah. Okay. I can take it over actually. Okay. Is the DVR for the cameras a white box? You all right?
I'm not trying to be cute here, ladies and gentlemen. But we are talking about Paul Caneiro. We are talking about a guy who is in the tech world. It's what he does for a living, right? You heard from Dr. Gould, his neighbor, that he helped him with the hard wiring of his cameras. He's got all this stuff in his basement. He helped his brother put the servers in. He helps him with generators and all kinds of stuff. But the police ask a simple question like, hey, where's your DVR? And all they get is, and then he looks to his daughter, Caitlin, who testified. Really, should she be the one answering that question? Shouldn't he just say, hey, it's in the garage, above the fridge, right below the camera that's in there? There's a camera in there too. And the next response is sort of like, oh, I'm having trouble with stuff in the garage. And then he gets asked, is the DVR a white box? I don't know. These answers are they're really probative of his state of mind at the time. Yeah, he's a victim of a fire, so we think at this time. But he's just being asked simple questions. And it just seems like he's trying to do one of these. Let me back away from this DVR. I don't know anything about it. Could be on, could be off. I don't know. Just remember when they actually download it later, Detective Weisbrot told you that they looked back to see if there were any issues. So it's not like it wasn't investigated. They pulled the video, the DVR, and then they looked back. And you may recall, you may not, it's been a long trial. It ran continuously without interruption since October 15th, 2018. So there's no problem with these cameras. Those access points that he and Dr. Gould had, that's just kind of like tech guy problems. It's like my Verizon router's not good enough, so I got a bunch of access points. If you look at that email, he's not saying my Wi-Fi doesn't work. They're talking about a Sense app. I think, and your recollection will control. But I think that ticket with the Wi-Fi or the Sense app, I think is what controls the light in his house. So it's we're not really talking about the same thing. Why couldn't Paul Caneiro just say, hey, my DVR's in the garage, it's a white box or it's a black box? He shouldn't have to look to his daughter for that answer. She's not the one in charge of the cameras, obviously, but he can't answer the question. And I don't want to belabor it, but it's really important that he's trying to get away from that DVR that he shut off 37 minutes or so before he left in the middle of the night. Because again, things like that, it's not like he told the police that, right? They want to argue now it's kind of innocuous. We don't know who's driving, but if we didn't look, we wouldn't even have known his car left because he didn't tell us. Cooperative, he's not a jerk, no doubt. But cooperative has a lot of meanings. And I'm not sure I agree with that. Remember, there are things in this case that you have to look at and you have to say to yourselves, why can't he just give us the answer, right? Keith is just saying, hey, Paul, give me the login, right? Give me the login. You don't know your login, Paul? It's the same thing as not knowing what the color of your DVR is. Maybe I don't, but he should, right? What he does for a living. He did everything in his house. and most of the things in his brother's house. Like, we're not talking about me and him being equals here. The passwords. I mean, when we think about what he can't tell Keith because he's not feeling well at 6:05 on November 19th. Think about, like, why that's important. Because he's trying to hide it. Because then we listen to other evidence, right?
Don't say the name of the bank. I'll give you the info. It's the account number is account name is AMAEGINA 99.
Okay.
Password is going to be either going to be a lowercase SGUARE, the number 1, 705, all numbers, all lowercase. If that doesn't work, try capital S at the beginning. And if that doesn't work, try exclamation capital S. Everything else the same, lowercase, and then just four numbers.
So he can't remember. He can't tell the police where his DVR is, or if he shut it off, or if it was not working properly, or if he didn't shut it off. And he couldn't get his brother to log into the TD Trust account because he didn't know it, he couldn't remember it, or because he didn't want him to get in there. I mean, obviously, we see here, this is a phone call that he has December 5th with Tiffany Rivera, who ultimately is the office manager for Square One and EcoStar. So it's just interesting, just something to keep in the back of your mind when you evaluate the idea that looks can be deceiving. Cooperative, because they say he was cooperative, doesn't mean he was cooperative. He was trying to evade. We didn't know it yet because we didn't know the DVR was shut off yet, and we didn't know his car left in the middle of the night. They heard I was asleep, and they believed it, but they continued to investigate.
Mr. Decker, just one second. Can we send that down? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, President Clark. When we talk about this, and we'll continue to get into it as we look at these phone calls between Keith and Paul, but we're looking at here the fact that he's spouting off his password to Tiffany Rivera because he wants Tiffany to get in there, into something that, like, he didn't want his brother to get into, because then we would have had the realization that we ultimately saw with the forging of the bank records and all the thefts. But think about, he can't give his brother the password on November 19th, 2018, about what, 9 hours before he was murdered? He murdered his brother. But in 2018,
We have no idea. At this point, the going theory that I have is that her eyeballs are trying to escape any affiliation, however loose and close or functional, to her brain. Her eyeballs are literally like putting a different LinkedIn up, like, we are not affiliated or responsible or even associated with this lawyer. We are moving on. It's been an interesting relationship, but we need some forward growth. The eyeballs are trying to leave her body before she gets fired. They can sense the danger.
Paul Caneiro logged into the TD Bank trust account 19 times. 19 times. He went into the trust account and said, I'm going to transfer it, not to Canada Life, but to myself. Like, there was a lot of discussion this morning about, like, this is a family business, and Keith takes money, and Paul takes money. Yeah, we did hear that. There is that. It's a family business. And they put a lot of stuff on credit cards and this and that. But that was not an invitation for the 10% owner to take money from the trust account. Because, interestingly, why would you kill your whole family? No one could ever do that. It's unimaginable, right? I get it. But, like, when you hear the evidence that he's stealing from the trust account and the trust, you know, you probably heard most of the context of, like, he's stealing from Keith, right? But he's not stealing from Keith. You know from the trust and from the attorney who came in and testified that when you create that irrevocable trust, you've given up control. Keith had no control. Make no mistake about it. All the things that Keith wanted to know, he wasn't even necessarily entitled to know. But by virtue of giving it to Paul, he gave him that access. But we heard about those duties, right? Fiduciary duties, duty of loyalty. You can't commingle. Yeah, you can get loans if you get permission from the beneficiaries, right? I mean, was there any testimony you ever asked Jennifer Caneiro, Sophia, or Jesse, like, hey, is it okay if I take a loan, I'll pay back? Yes. That was a loose trust. But that doesn't mean that he could just go in there and take it. And there was conversations about paying the money back from April because he transferred it to himself. And then there was some testimony that
Let's see. State is we are still going. So, yeah, we got behind because I had to pick up the youngest, most feral.
he then took money from his account, put it back in the business, and ended up in Greece or something. But really what happens when he's paying it back is he's going to the business, and then Keith is funding the trust again, and then Paul is supposed to send it to Canada Life. We heard expert testimony about the irrevocable trust, okay? Mr. Cardenas explained it, broke it down. We tried to keep it pretty relevant. But understand when we're talking about this trust, like there's a lot you can do with the trust, right? You can invest it in real estate and all that kind of stuff. But really what this was Paul had one job, and it was Keith funds the TD Bank trust account from his payroll, and Paul clicks transfer. That's all he had to do. But he couldn't resist the access to Keith's money. When we talk about special bonds, you heard testimony about special bonds. Really, the only special bond you've heard about is Paul taking his brother's money as if it was his own. And they're still trying to justify it. He put money back in, and God knows when he put $160,000 in the business. But he owns 10%. I don't even know if that was a buy-in. No idea. But like, he put money, like he never put money. You know, it's like when we go to the financials and they want to say he's got $50,000 disposable income. Well, they're not counting $160,000 spent on an Amex in 2017 or $140,000 on an Amex. They're not
Holy
counting.
crap.
You know, they gave you $25,000 worth of car payments.
$100,000 on a credit card? That's functionally stupid as hell.
A year, which is probably accurate. But then when you combine the insurance, it's like $39,000. I mean, there are massive expenses here. I mean, just look at the chart that the capacity testified to. Let's just look at the stuff that you weren't talking about. It wasn't talked about. Woodshire Apartments, that's rent.
Jason J, that's just one credit card. Apparently the other one had a very similar balance.
2,673. Yardy Service, again, that's the same company that services the apartment in Ocean Township. $3,666. Restoration Hardware, $15,720. Tiffany, $17,714. It's like when we heard the testimony about how like there were all the renovations going on in Paul's basement, right? We heard it just because it was in context of Lieutenant Catalona and the photos. But then some of the defense witnesses were talking about how, you know, they're putting in custom cabinets, right? All the new lighting you can control from your phone, and all the kitchen, and God knows what. It's like, stop spending, Paul. Stop spending. Like, you don't get to do all these things and then just take your brother's money. And Keith had enough. Like, yeah, Keith was emotionally cursed, right? He was pretty pissed off at Paul. We'll see it. But like, did he give Paul an invitation to take his money? Like, let's not talk like he wasn't in financial distress. Okay? Could he have changed his ways and made it work financially? Sure. And it's almost like, are we criticizing Keith because he didn't have disability at Paul background? Like, does that make him a bad guy? Like, everybody should have disability and still be able to work at the family business? Like, because when we talk about later about, I'll stop saying later, but it makes you nervous. But when we talk about Paul and all the things he stood to lose.
Judge Kent, thank you. You made Judge Kent smile.
Makes you nervous. But when we talk about Paul and all the things he stood to lose, you know, Keith doesn't have that fallback, right? Paul has the disability, right? That's what they're arguing to. He's still got $200,000 in disability coming to him. But like, that's not enough. It's not enough for him. He's losing out on all the income that he gets from Square One, right? And EcoStar. But the thing about Paul is, Ms. Wallace discussed it in her opening, is that like, he can't go get a job if Square One and EcoStar go away. Keith got an MBA from Columbia, right? He was planning. That's why I went back to school. Like, is Doris Duke, we'll talk about Doris Duke, is it going away, is it not going away? Like, there was just a lot of uncertainty. But Keith was preparing for it. He had job interviews. He applied to Amazon and Ben Paolucci. We heard about that. They had dinner that night, and they were saying that he didn't say anything bad about Paul, but there's only certain things that we can elicit from witnesses. That's actually admissible. So they had a conversation where it's true.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay, wait. Sorry, I wasn't.
And he didn't say anything bad about Paul, but there's only certain things that we can elicit from witnesses. That's actually admissible. So they had a conversation where it's true.
I'm going to sustain that objection. Disregard that last sentence. Go ahead, Mr. Decker.
Sure. So Mr. Paolucci and Keith went to dinner Saturday night, which would have been the 17th of November. And before they went to dinner, they were actually at Ben Paolucci's house, and they were on the computer. Ben worked for Amazon, right? And Keith was applying for jobs using Ben's like kind of referral program. And then they went to dinner, right? And what Mr. Paolucci was able to say was that I asked him not what the conversation was about, but what was the advice that he gave to Keith. And the advice that he gave to Keith was stop worrying about Paul and start worrying about yourself and your money and your family. So like that's the context of Ben. And Ben texted Paul the morning of the fire, right? We know he did. He also texted Keith. And remember, Keith texted Paul too. We know all that. But it doesn't change the fact that he is trying to deceive. Just obviously a picture of the garage here that we're looking at in Tilden Drive. I showed you the photos of the box that powers the DVR. The shed. I mean, there was a lot of testimony about this. There was a lot of discussion this morning. We see the white bucket over there. We know that that was put there by an officer who meant well, and he wanted to preserve a wet footprint, right? Thought he was doing the right thing. Ultimately, Lieutenant Catalona said he got there when he lifted it up and it dropped. Kind of did his job, not what he meant for it to do, but did his job. Catalona says, though, so when he looks at that slate pile, it's not there anymore. But ultimately, Catalona, though, looks around and he finds this footprint, right? And they argue we didn't take any shoes or anything like that. There were shoes in the basement in that pile. But Catalona looks at that, and then he actually consults with, I think he testified, Detective Flanagan, who's a little more knowledgeable with footprints. And they basically said that there was nothing pattern-wise that they were able to get from that shoe impression. So, you know, listen, if you believe the DNA, the ballistics, the cameras, and everything else in this case, that's Paul Caneiro's footprint. I mean, that's just the reality. He went to get the gas from the shed. He left it on the side of the garage. So I would submit to you, it's not like it's not there. It's just, you can argue that we don't know whose it is, only because there's no way of knowing whose it is. I think it speaks for itself. There's really no other explanation than at 1:28, it says 2:28. If you remember, it's off by an hour. Detective Westcott testified that despite it running continuously since the middle of October without interruption, all of a sudden this shuts off as Mr. Caneiro reaches up towards the camera in the system. Do I know if he pulled out an extension cord or if he hit the off button on the machine? No, I don't. Can't see it based upon the perspective. But it is very clear that he just shut the cameras off on the outside. So one of the reasons I say that is because of his actions, there's a lot that you didn't get to see on the outside of the house. Like, it's hard to argue they don't know who this person was or they don't know what was going on out here, when the only reason we don't know is because of him. So it's like kind of a little bit like interesting that you can cause the problem and then point the finger to someone else. Like, we should have done something better. Sorry, you shut the cameras off. We could never see what was shown on those cameras. But again, we talk about cooperative versus not uncooperative, but like, why is he telling the police certain things? Because remember, investigations, they progress. And police, you know, they get a piece of information and they say we didn't investigate. But they get a piece of information like, was he asleep? I don't know, let's figure it out. Ultimately, we know he's not asleep. Just like we knew he's in the basement. Just like being told that, or telling the police that it was 4 p.m. and the last time he was there. So the police, we heard a lot about canvassing, and I already talked to you about the canvas on Tilden Drive, and there just weren't any cameras on the other side. I don't know what to tell you other than that. But as police are at 27 Tilden and they ask the Caneiros to go to the police department, ultimately while they're there, and you heard testimony from the daughters, that they learn about something that's going on in Colts Neck. At 12:34, Paul and his family are at the police department, and Colts Neck police receives 2 911 calls reporting a fire at 15 Willowbrook. The first caller, pretty simultaneous, but one of the callers was Catherine Lucchese. She lived right across the street, 44 Willowbrook. We have the surveillance from her house, and she calls 911.
Oh.
911 radio emergency.
Hi, my name is there's a lot of smoke coming out of the house.
What's your address?
15 Willowbrook Road.
15 Willowbrook Road?
Yes.
And what town?
Post Mexico.
And what's your name?
My name is Kathy.
Kathy, what's the phone number you're calling from, Kathy?
Yeah, I just somebody to send it right away.
What's the phone, Kathy, what's the phone number you're calling from? And you know if anyone's in the residence?
I'm calling my neighbor, they're not answering me. I'm getting them home.
You see any flames? You see any flames or is it smoke?
A lot of smoke, I guess, which is fire. It's on the outside of the house.
Sorry, what address you calling from?
I'm right across. I'm sorry, what street is that?
You're right across the street?
I'm right across the street.
We'll get somebody right out there, Kathy. Bye-bye.
You noted, you remember from her testimony that she had kids that she had a bus stop with Jesse and Sophia. So one of the first things she tells police that day on the 911 call, and also when the police arrived, is that Jesse and Sophia weren't at the bus stop. Now, I know kind of where we're at now. You've heard a lot of testimony. You've heard arguments from counsel. And it's kind of been like almost like, I think it's sort of presupposed now that like we know when the fire starts, right? We know that, the power gets cut and then the telecom gets cut. But like it wasn't always that simple. It took investigation by detectives and all kinds of surveillance and different things to try to determine when this fire started. So when we look at it in the perspective of like how the family was being treated at the police department and the like. This is being reported at 12:34 p.m. Like the police have no idea yet that this fire started earlier. It's going to take the generator. It's going to take getting some video. It's going to take, the 911 call from Mr. Kapoor. So when we think about the investigation, just recall that it takes a lot of effort to figure these things out. Even if now we're all kind of conceding that the fire started at around, 3:42 or whatever, just shortly before that. And obviously, in addition to Ms. Lucchese, we had Dr. Boris Holstein, who lived next door. Ms. Massalone talked about it. He also places on one call once he shows up, and then he ultimately goes around and finds Keith's body.
Hello?
Hi, I didn't hear your name or what you're reporting, sir. What are you reporting?
Okay, fire.
Where?
Willowbrook Lane, Willowbrook Road.
What's the address? Okay, what's the address?
I think it's 40, I don't know, I think it's 44 Willowbrook.
What's on fire?
No, and he didn't bring vodka either. Although, kudos to whoever wrote Waiting for Godot, because honestly, basically writing the play and having the same thing happen in the second act is a scam I can get behind, and calling it fine art and absurdist theater. I mean, the balls to sell that shit, that is a grift I need to get into.
What is on fire?
The house.
Where do you see flames coming from?
I see the smoke from behind. I thought that's my neighbor from behind me. I opened the door, and there is a smoke coming out, and there's a person laying down.
Where are they laying down?
On the property.
Can you get over
In
to
front
them?
of the house.
All right, get over
Yes,
to them.
I'm coming over.
Okay.
Oh,
But you know what he says. He ultimately discovers, oh my God, there's a corpse. And they're like, what? He's like, there's a body. It's dead.
Rapes.
And he ultimately finds Keith Canerio, who he knows he can't positively identify given the state he's in with the foot on. Now, police have a fire and they have a murder. They're ultimately going to start making other notifications to prosecutor's office and different agencies. Fire's coming, but then we start to uncover the scene evidence, and ultimately the electrical panel and the generator and the shell casings and some of the bullets. And it's like at this point, shortly thereafter, that police have this like coming to moment, right? Because we have a fire in the morning, and then other detectives get sent to a fire and a murder in another town, and then all of a sudden they realize, wow, like the guy who's killed in Colt's Neck is the brother of the guy who had the fire. And obviously, it's kind of learned pretty quickly because detectives from my office were at both, so that they communicate. But understand the context of like some of the testimony from Mr. Canerio's daughters in the context of like what was going on and what police knew, because you know that it's not immediate that everybody said Paul Caneiro must have driven in the middle of the night. They didn't know yet. They didn't know the car left, the DVR, and all that stuff. So they just have two incidents, and they're actually, I think the testimony is pretty clear. Like You got people who are victims of a fire, and then you got their family being shot, killed, stabbed, and like they don't know the connection yet. So they're taking precautions. And I'd submit that it was important that morning for the police to speak to the Caneiro family and to try to get information about what happened. Because they were victims. They're still victims. They're victims of one of the counts in the indictment. And that you're going to have to decide. The aggravated arson at his own house. They live there. You heard their testimony. They support their dad. Oh, okay. I get it. We all get it. Okay? But the family photos, I mean, that may have been then. That might have even been in '84. But like, everybody's got that breaking point, right? Nobody knows what's going to trigger. There's nothing that can trigger something like this, but something triggered it with Mr. Caneiro. I will never be able to tell you how he could kill his niece and his nephew. It certainly wasn't for $17,000 on a Tiffany card or something. Clearly. But that doesn't change with Mr. Caneiro. It doesn't change with Corey Caneiro. It doesn't change with God knows who else. That motive doesn't work for anyone. But you hear that testimony because it is relevant, because it just happened. Let's keep that in mind. Hours before this happens, hours before Mr. Caneiro's up in his bedroom, doesn't have any contact that night with either of his daughters and his wife. Sitting up in the bedroom with the gun, with the laser sight, with the laser light, like kind of sitting there probably stewing. Like, you know what, Keith? No more. Like, I'm not doing your freaking chores anymore. Like, yeah, I know I stole from you, but you know what? Deal with it. I'll pay you back.
UK Anton, would the UK be interested in a trade? Now, listen, we're getting we're getting Greenland. So, how would you feel about a modest proposal or two? I'm just saying. Unlike Jonathan Swift, I will be trying to profit from this, but we have an island now. Yes, but this one could be an open air prison, escape from Greenland with Snake Plissket Zimzer. I'm willing to watch that and sanction it.
How can I feel like? I mean, that seems to be the trigger, the reaction. There's no issue like that with Corey or anybody else. Like, that's not a coincidence. You don't get yelled at by your brother at 6:05. You don't get accused of stealing by your brother at 6:05. You don't shut off your camera at 1:28. You don't then go down to your basement and shut off the rest of your cameras at 1:31. Your car doesn't just miraculously leave at 2:07. It doesn't just miraculously show up in cold snap and then miraculously come back at 4:08. It's not a coincidence. That's called evidence. I won't belabor this. You heard the testimony from Dr. Zhang and Dr. Toma. I'm not here to show you more pictures. I didn't do that because it's fun. I didn't want to make people react a certain way. You need to evaluate this evidence free from emotion. They've told you that. The judge will tell you that. I'll tell you that. Horrific. Horrific. But if you think he didn't do it, he didn't do it. I suggest that would be outrageous to believe based upon the evidence in this case. But don't do it because of emotion. What happened?
I really like the way the state's handling the medical reports and basically saying, the defense probably said that we were going to try to pull on your heartstrings. I'm not even going to show you the pictures because I don't want to be accused of pulling on your heartstrings. Look at the evidence. This is what we call mic and drop.
It's horrific. She didn't deserve that. And he didn't deserve that. But I want to prove this case to you, as far as prove this case to you, beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm not sure what else we can give you by way of physical, tangible evidence. Anyone who gets backed into a corner by DNA, ballistics, cameras shutting off, car leaving in the middle of the night, they can all go, he did it. Anybody can go, Corey did it. We actually be fair to both sides. I would suggest to you that when the evidence suggests that only one person could have done this, then the obligation as jurors would be to follow the evidence in the right verdict, which is ultimately going to be that, as unfathomable as it may be, he did this. So we know that the bodies are all pulled out. It's horrible. Obviously, that scene was terrible. I'm not sure I agree with the representations that it was such a bloody scene, right? There was blood everywhere. I mean, there was fire everywhere. We saw the blood in the kitchen, and Detective Cordoma testified about the bloodstain pattern analysis. And yeah, the swabs were the bloodstain was done in 2018. The swabs were taken later. I don't know if the testimony really said why. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter because they're just swabbed with blood. The DNA was degraded. You would have known it. You would have seen the numbers. They wouldn't have been able to. There wouldn't have been enough quality or quantity to come up with results, but they did. They're single source samples. Like, okay, they were taken later, but it doesn't change the fact that it's Sophia and Jesse's DNA. And it doesn't change the fact of what that means. Detective Cordova, like in his conclusion, he talked about how, you know, we tie his testimony in with the DNA results, but when we look at the door frame going into the kitchen, Sophia's blood. We go around the island. There's a handprint and some blood. Jesse. Then you go continuing north, a little bit west, to the area where you saw the picture where Jesse was found in the kitchen on the ground. There's some blood there, and you assume it's Jesse's, right? Because Jesse's found lying there. But when we found out is that swab that was taken from that area, it's actually a mixture. It's a mixture of Jesse and Sophia with like really high DNA results. They're in the PowerPoint. But like, then moving on a little bit east along the kitchen island, underneath the sink, there's another DNA sample taken, and that's Sophia. So like, in the context of like what's going on in Colt's neck, there's this like running around the kitchen. And what are we running for? What are we running from? And Sophia, you know where Carmelo Lamarca, the firefighter, you know where she was found up on the, going up to the second floor on the landing. She's there, her mom's a little bit below her by the basement stairs. Like, she's found there dead. But she was bleeding in the kitchen. Like, what was going on? You know, when we think about that in the context of like, where is Jennifer Canero's phone? I'm not sure I understand why that's so important, but you have to understand the context of like, what was Jennifer Canero doing? What was she responding to? Her husband had left the bed, right? He went to investigate why the power's out. Presumably she woke up either when he left or like at some point she realizes the power's off and he's gone. Maybe she gets up to look for him, maybe not. Maybe she hears gunshots and then goes to bed. Like, is she worried about her phone? Is it maybe just in her bedroom still in the rubble with the Tiffany boxes? I mean, you saw that testimony. I mean, they don't dig out the master bedroom because it's not anywhere near the point of origin. Cordoma told you they dug out the basement in the area of the closet, right? They dig it out lowest, trying to find lowest visible signs of fire. U patterns, V patterns, all that kind of stuff. But like, this wasn't a robbery, right? Are we trying to say it was a robbery? It wasn't a robbery. Think about it. The photo of Keith Caneiro when he's lying on his front lawn face down, with his face in the dirt. His phone's sitting in his pocket. His wallet's in his pocket. His phone's right next to him. Like, nobody took his phone. Nobody took his wallet. This isn't a robbery. No one took Jennifer Canero's phone. Could they have looked for it? For sure. For sure. If they look back now, they would have gone up to the master bedroom. They probably would have. Could they have gotten phone records? Sure. But you can't search something you don't have. So I don't understand exactly why that is, because think about the context of what was going on when she left her bedroom and what she found. She ultimately, obviously left the room, went downstairs, and at some point she encountered someone who shot her, stabbed her a few times, shot her, and they moved on to the kids. So like, the phone, really? You know, obviously it's important. Again, like I said, I think we've established the timeline. We've probably done a lot of talking about timelines. I got one too. I have no problem with their timeline, 0. But again, when we talk about investigation, like, did they do this? Did they not do this? Did they do this? There's a lot of work that goes into building that timeline. Like, it starts with, you know, Keith Canero dead, and then you find the casings, and then all of a sudden you find the meters ripped off, right? And then you talk to the firefighters. Anybody rip that off? No. Go to the generator. Anybody shut it off? No. It's like, what's going on? And then it takes time. Like the Wise cameras, you don't get that right away, right? You don't get that video of someone out there from 235 to 251 creeping outside the house. And they're talking about why it takes so long, 15 minutes, right? From 235 to 251, when again, the power shuts off miraculously. No coincidence. Are we seeing a pattern here? But they argued to you this morning that, like, if he's such a tech guy and he knows Keith's house so well, which he does, why did it take him so long? Well, I submit when he goes the way of the generator, you'll see the video. All he's got to do is the generator, shut it off. I mean, he knows the generator. Tyler Badaracco, the fire chief, who's also an electrician, said that this is not like where most people would turn off the generator. He went and shut off the actual the master switch. But he was saying that that's not something that like many people even know is there and how to shut it off. But that doesn't take him long because Paul knows the generator. Wayne knows everything in Keith's house. But the electrical panel is different. That's not really like expertise. That's like brute force, right? You got to figure it out. You got to have something on you to rip that door off, right? And somehow you got to rip the tag off, and you got to rip. I don't even know exactly how it works, but it's not as quick as just flipping the switch. And you hear it. You hear it on the video when we watch that Wise camera from the garage. You can hear that like banging, like toward before the camera goes off. All of a sudden, you hear like throughout. I mean, the sound's not always perfect, but you can hear it. It takes. There's manipulation involved. It's not quick, And he's also sitting out there. If you think about it, he's got to get the power off. He's also then waiting. Like I don't think he wanted to wait. Let's say 27 minutes for Keith to come outside, right? He didn't want that, but that's really what happened. He shut the power off at 2:51. He's got to wait for Keith, but he's not going in that house. He's not going into that house until there's no men left in that house. That's the reality of that.
I was wondering if it was going to hit different and they were going to really go after his kind of attack the family man, the man of honor, this facade. I very much like this attack because I think it will be very hard for Paul to hide as much as he's had a flat affect. More so his familiar, his human familiar, freaking crazy eyes over there. She is physically unable to not respond to every point that the state is making. And I'm so glad I'm not on this jury because y'all, I couldn't stop laughing.
Keith never saw those shots coming. But so that electrical system and the Verizon information, it's all part of the process of figuring out the timing. Because it's not like it's always been like, oh, it's a given that the fire started here. I mean, we saw the cross-examination as trial progressed. And I think even when we were talking about the timeline and the property, I think at some point the questions were even like, okay, there's the Macan at 228 or 428, whatever it is, the second video. Like all of a sudden now it's like, okay, it is the Macan. We just can't prove to you who's in. And obviously you can't see inside the Macan, right? We know that. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Nothing anyone can do about it. It just is what it is. But is it a coincidence with all these other things, or is he really just driving for it? But obviously we see the evidence related to the generator. You've seen these pictures a million times. That's the generator. But these are just little pieces of information that they learned quickly in the investigation. They can't go in the house right away, right? They're still putting out the fire. Detective Cordome and others told you that the scene's got to be made safe. They have to put the beams in downstairs and the supports in downstairs in the basement to make it safe. But as they do that, the detectives now are kind of focusing on like, all right, we got these two incidents. Let's canvass in Colts Neck. Let's canvass in Ocean Township. And again, they didn't zone in on Paul Caneiro. This is just what the cameras show. Starting at 30 Tilton. See the blinking of lights up here? That's Mr. Caneiro's driveway. .207, which would be completely consistent with what's later with 19 Oxford, when you see Mr. Caneiro's car pulling out of his driveway. This is the second camera of 30 Tilton. This is the Porsche Macan driving in the direction of the stop sign at Green Grove Road. I'd also note that when you look at the taillights, and I know there was, remember there was some circling with taillights and things, because it wasn't always a given that was Mr. Caneiro's car. Like, we got this, but maybe we didn't yet have the 19 Oxford, which shows it's his driveway and the car's leaving. But it also wouldn't show exactly which one. So we paid a lot of attention investigatively to the style of the taillights, and also you have to try to link it to some of the video that was in Colts Neck. This video is kind of, I would submit to you all that when police obtained this video, this is where the sirens went off. This is like the moment where it's like, he's not sleeping. I don't even remember if we knew he shut off the DVR yet. Probably think we did. But then you get this, and it's like, I don't need to slow this down for you. Just watch it for yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the Porsche Macan that just left from 27 Tilden Driveway at 2:07 a.m. heading north on Green Grove Road. We have the video, obviously, from 308 Green Grove. This is the other camera showing the front. But here we're going to see the stop sign. You start to see the tail lights that are pretty distinct. Again, it's just camera 2, which basically shows that 30 Tilden car goes past there, goes to 308 Green Grove, and now is heading in the northern direction. Bringing us to 85 Willowbrook, which was down the street from 15 Willowbrook. Here it says on the camera it's 2:23:53, and it says Paul arrives at Willowbrook 2:27 a.m. Recall there was some testimony from Detective Mahoney about the fact that the camera was about 3 minutes slow. Obviously, that's one of the videos where you have to do things like look at the taillights and look at, maybe slow it down. And I would submit to you that, throughout the course of this trial has been conclusively established as being the Porsche Macan. At 44 Willowbrook, this is Miss Lucchese's house. She provided the cameras. She's the 911 caller, as we just talked about. Appears like that car is slowing down at the end. Based upon my review of the video, obviously, it's something that you all need to make that determination. But it appears to me, because obviously there's a lot of testimony about where the car would have parked, that driveway that's to the west of the Canerio property. And I think the one thing that we all agree on, that we've always believed that obviously Paul Caneiro didn't park in the truck's driveway when he went there at 2:30 in the morning. There's no other place to park and try to avoid detection, potentially from anyone driving down the street. So I don't think there's any doubt with respect to where Mr. Caneiro parked his car. Obviously, might as well just touch it now because we're here. There was some cross-examination, first with Mahoney about that 867 Route 34. So that's the house they talked about this morning. It's the house behind Keith and Jennifer's house. And Mahoney was asked about it, and there were some questions about whether it was documented. But then when Petrozello testified, Lieutenant Petrozello said it's actually 867 Route 34, but the address is Route 34, despite it being behind Keith's house. Mahoney had previously said, I didn't get the cameras from there, but someone went there. I think someone got it. And then Petrozello came in, and instead of having like a gotcha moment, he explained, yeah, we got cameras from there. It's a Route 34 address. And ultimately, we looked at it, we didn't see anything. Counsel for Mr. Caneiro played a little small portion of it. You can basically show, but it doesn't show. And you can see the gate doesn't shoot very far down. But that's what the cameras show. It's been talked about they didn't do this and they didn't try to get cameras here, but they asked about the cameras and it almost seemed like we were being accused of not getting them. And then Lieutenant Petrozello says, we looked at them and that's just what they show. So that's one of those things about the address of 15 Willowbrook, some of the arguments that are made about that driveway, what's over there. And there was that one picture I think they've shown in the past. It's like an overhead. No, they need it, but it's an overhead of 15 Willowbrook. And they show that little driveway to the west for that 867 address. And they also show that little pathway on the front lawn, like right before the driveway. It's like a little cutout. And then, they were kind of suggesting with some witnesses, I think, that the car could have gone that way. That's true. Obviously, you're not going to park in the middle of Willowbrook, leave the car running when you go and kill people. But one of the things that Petrozello said when he was asked about that is that, yeah, he was aware of that entrance, right? Or it's not really an entrance. It's like an opening between trees on the front lawn. And he said, one of the reasons I'm aware of it is because we used it. Law enforcement actually used that to drive vehicles on the lawn during the course of fire suppression and the coming days while they're investigating the scene for 5 days or so at Willowbrook. But in that regard, we'll talk about it probably again, but it's a large property, right? You saw Willowbrook, it's a big house. I mean, it's a big house and it's a big piece of property. But when you look at that overhead map, and maybe I'll pull it up at some point, think about getting out of the basement, going up the stairs, going out the side door where the door's open, right? He leaves that door open, probably to mend some hair to a fire out gather. This is one of the reasons, sort of like he said at 27 Tilden, when they closed the garage door and opened it, he was like, I was afraid that air was going to do something. He made some comment like that. But when you leave, you start the fire, you cut the line, you start the fire, and then you got to get out of it. we talked about how you got to get out of there quick, right? That property is not that big. I mean, like we could estimate it, but it wasn't measured by detective boat or anything. But maybe it's like from here to wherever you guys go downstairs at the end of the day in a straight line. It's not that far. There's no way that someone who just murdered 4 people can't get out of that basement, run across the lawn, jump in a car, and then be on this camera at that time. Like, it's not really a gotcha. It just completely makes sense. It's kind of like the argument about, well, Cirillo and Petrozello told you that they had to go to Pennsylvania to talk to Corey Caneiro, right? Because he didn't drive at night. That's the testimony. They drove to Pennsylvania. They met with him. Then they argued that, like, oh, he can't drive at night, but hey, the morning of the fire at Paul's house, he could drive over to 27 Tilton 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, in the dark. As if they're the same thing. As if driving from Pennsylvania at, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night is the same thing as driving from Fairhaven to Ocean Township to help your brother. He brought him money. He took them out for bagels. That's all you have. So it's like, oh, he can't drive at night, right? He asked him to come over. That's what you have. So let's just keep that in mind when we're trying to tarnish something that has no evidence.
What the hell happened to Mira Sorvino? Look, you got away from the weirdo Weinstein, and Romeo and Michelle is still an awesome movie.
Now we're at six minutes after that OET line is cut. He runs across the property, jumps in his car. And remember, this camera's right there. Like,
Okay, look, again, I generally never, ever, ever comment on the families. What in the Bride of Chucky smile is this?
the driveway that we're talking about would be like right over here. So it's not like if you remember from Miss Lou Casey's cameras, when you looked at him during the day, remember she was over here and she's on the phone, she's calling 911. You could see the round driveway. And like you could see directly across to 15 Willowbrook, the property. So all you're doing is going here, getting in your car, and then going here. So that timeline is not anything other than completely consistent with getting the hell out of there. We got the Forest Pecan at 348, heading back to Ocean Township. We'll run 308 Green Grove. It's going to turn left on.
Now, the only caveat I will give you guys is that when I'm in pain, or I'm overcome with emotion, there have been times that I've started hysterically laughing instead of crying. That being said, I have felt it coming on, and I do excuse myself because I know how inappropriate it is. I mean, I am not so socially inept that I don't realize that this is a complete anachronistic, sort of reaction for most people, and it isn't well received. So I understand that. And if I feel it coming on and I will excuse myself, and then come back to a situation. Oh my good Lord in heaven.
Shut and drive.
Y'all, I am just going to warn you that we will have another generously tipsy stream for the sentencing, because I swear to goodness, if if I have to sit through his entire parade of moron sycophants after all of this, after Smiley McPsycho face over there is I am not gonna hold back if I have to hear letter upon letter of, "My dad is, like, the bestest dad, and the state is super mean." I just I will not have it.
Now again, we see this is the camera again that we talked about before. This is like the conclusive shot that this is Paul Caneiro's car. Car passes 308 Tilden, or 308 Green Grove heading toward Tilden. Now it's on the 2.
Jason J, his oldest daughter, the one that was pregnant or is pregnant, sorry, was smiling during this, like, straight to the camera. Now, in all fairness to her, she might not realize she's on camera, but maybe when a lawyer is explaining exactly how your dad is all the guilties, smiling like the bride of Chucky isn't a good thing. Holy crap balls.
Then we're going to look up in this area. Once the car passes, we're going to see the area of the driveway at 22nd Tilden. Just about 408, or just after 408, Mr. Canero's car has passed 30 Tilden, and now he's pulled into his driveway, which is ultimately going to be corroborated by the 19 Oxford cameras. And this is just a visual comparison you saw during the trial. This was just Mr. Canero's car leaving, 20750, and this is a picture of the car at the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office facility later, showing that that's Mr. Canero's car. 408, returning, same photo. And we talked about the lights. Part of what the investigation determined real quick, that the loaner, the Porsche Macan, it's part of the one over here, had tail light out, okay? So the light over here, when you watch on the video, there's a light over here that's on. This one's out. So you see on this side, there's
Holy shit, someone call Canton. We need to cross train with these guys because notice how they match the tail light. I mean, it's almost without solo cups or leaf blowers or interesting.
a light here and a light on the side. And then we have these kind of long, elongated lights that you can see distinctively on those videos. So again, this is something that needed work to be figured out. Now, again, in the context of investigation and what we learned when, and why he would need to flee the area so quickly. Once the investigation started in Colt's Neck, and they get the generator, they get the casings, and they get, they begin the origin and cause. But shortly before that, while they really can't do anything that day, Detective Zerillo, if you'll recall, he runs like the call sheets from the night before, just because yes, he usually does that in the morning. And now all of a sudden they have this incident. And ultimately he uncovers a phone call.
Now, it does look like we are going to be finishing with the state tomorrow, which I'm not mad at. I do think that the state has a lot to respond to as far as the defense. And I think he's doing a good job of responding only to what is necessary to and not responding to all of the various issues that were kind of spaghetti against the wall thrown up by the defense. I think he is being judicious, and I'm fairly sure, again, it seems like he's not deviating much from what he had planned. And you can tell that he has a command of the subject matter jurisdiction. Uh, so he's able to do this with a fluidity that keeps you engaged. And he has broken this down in a way that is not only engaging, but it makes logical sense, which is like a balm to your very, very hurt brain after the defense. So I have actually I don't mind the fact that we're going to hear more of the state's case. I also enjoy the fact that he basically glossed over the multitude of injuries. And I want you to really think about, other than the Daryl Brooks case, would there be another state attorney who would have ignored basically sympathy gold like that? I mean, of any case that you could legitimately, I think, not be faulted for tugging on those heartstrings just a little with how horrific this was. Excuse me. It it's refreshing, and again, it just shows the confidence the state has. And I don't know if she has a job after this case. I have never ever seen anything like her closing.
Middle of the night, reporting shots fired. And that's where ultimately police are able to track down the 911 call from Mr. Kapoor. And that obviously was something that was very interesting because, you heard the testimony from Detective Cordoma about the slow burning fire. But again, that's not necessarily something conclusively that's that easy to establish unless you have other information uncovered by the investigation, like the ONT line and the generator. So the timing of that, it's going to become the question of like, is there a coincidence between the timing of electricity loss, shots fired, and then ultimately, the fire itself? So that's where we get to the 911 call from Mr. Kapoor.
Compton Police, Operator Ward. Hi. No, you're not allowed to hunt anywhere in the middle of the night. Are you hearing gunshots? Okay, where are you? Let me send somebody to the area. Okay, you don't see anything, you just hear it? Okay, absolutely, we'll send somebody right over to the area. I mean, you said you can't see a car or anything that would be involved or anything like that, right? It's pretty dark. Okay. What street are you on, just so we can get a reference point? You're on. Okay. And how many of them did you hear? 5. Okay, let me send somebody where you're at there. Can I just get your name for my record? And what's your telephone number, Dennis? Just for my record, we're not going to call you. Okay, and you don't want to speak to an officer, you just wanted the area checked, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was something to go via
Yeah, let me just double check, make sure. I don't think if it was an officer putting down a deer, it would go off that much. And I don't see them doing anything right now. Yeah, so it's not an officer putting a deer down. All right, we'll send somebody right out. Thanks so much for reporting it, Dennis. Have a good morning.
Obviously, that's something that's uncovered, which leads kind of to the realization of, like, initially, fire doesn't start at 12:34, right? It's just when it's discovered. It actually occurs. The murders and the fires actually occur hours earlier than that. It's just, for whatever reason, that fire just didn't catch very quickly. And ultimately, the introduction of oxygen by first responders and firefighters ultimately had that fire go from X to Y very quickly.
JKD Buck, that was the neighbor that was kind of behind the Keith Caneiro property. He was the one that called in the 5 shots early in the morning. And he was actually rather insistent when he didn't hear anything and didn't see any police going around. He actually called back because it was just so weird to him. He actually called to see if maybe someone was hunting at night, or possibly the dispatcher even looked up if one of the police officers or deputies had to take care of a injured deer. Sometimes that does happen in rural areas. So there are certain times where it could be possible that you'd hear one, maybe two shots, but 5, 6, that is a little odd.
We talked about the cameras, obviously, a lot. We talked about how they nitpick Marino and how he unplugged this and unplugged that. But obviously now we're looking at a situation where just we got shots fired at 3:26. We got a fire call at 12:34, right? And we got murders. Now we're looking back as the investigation beginning, and it's like we got all these. We got his car leaving and coming. Now it's starting to make sense as to like, why is this guy shutting off his camera at 2:08 when we have a shots fired call at 3:26, 3:30? Starting to make it look like there's not just an issue with this camera. It's starting to look purposeful. It's a buildup, and it's the police following the evidence, the surveillance, not ballistics yet, not DNA, but they're following the evidence, and it's like, shut off the camera, leave in the middle of the night, shots fired, car comes back, fire at my house. Oh, and yeah, shut off my cameras so you can't see it. That's before, ladies and gentlemen. That's all before DNA. That's all before ballistics. That's all before figuring out that the guy's up in his room practicing. Because when you look at it in the context of the defense, that the arguments that being made today, obviously, we listen to Mass Stallone. Obviously, you respect defense now. You all work well together during the course of trial. But when you look at what they're trying to argue to you, it's really that Paul Caneiro, for you to find anything other than he killed everybody, he would have to be the unluckiest man in the world, because he would have to shut off his cameras, get framed, but then not be able to prove he got framed. It's really kind of hard to sink your teeth into that. We talked about the cadaver dog, and now we just talk about from the perspective of, by shutting off the cameras, the 4 cameras outside, the one above the DVR in the garage, and then the 2 Wi-Fi. What you, ladies and gentlemen, and what we, as the investigative team in the state of New Jersey, missed because of what he did at 1:28 and 1:31 in the morning is we missed who took the gun out of his padlocked gun locker in the basement, right? All the guns are kept there, they're locked up, right? I don't know how anyone's getting in there with that locker. You saw the lock in the pictures. Who got in the Macon? Who backed out of the driveway? Who then came back after the murder spree downstairs, right, where all the guns are kept, swap the barrel, take the barrel out, put the old barrel back in, lock it back up in your locker, right? Who transferred that go bag into the Porsche Macan? Like, remember, when you watch the camera, the DVR in the garage, when he shuts it off, it's staring at the Macan, right? So that's just another thing that, like, when he popped the rear of the Cayenne and put the bag in it, we would have seen that. But because of what he did, we can't. But I don't know if seeing it would be better than the fact that he just shut off his cameras so you wouldn't see it. I mean, we could probably debate which one would be more important or more probative of his guilt and all the hindering efforts. Who buried the bloody clothes in the corner of the basement? Again, we've been criticized about like transfer and all this stuff, but like, you would have saw it if you didn't shut off the camera. You would have seen it. Who went outside, set the fire? Who tried to torch the Macan in the driveway? That flash of fire. The one camera is staring at the Porsche Macan. He shuts off the camera because he's about to do these things. Because here's what we're looking at: the Porsche Cayenne with the backpack, right? We got the barrel, we got the knife, we got the FLIR. He's got multiple spare phones. I can show them to you. You need to. I'm not saying he used spare phones to plug the FLIR into so he can see better. I'm not saying I don't know. I don't know if he did or not, but he had it. And it's like, why is all this stuff in the bag? Why is it in the bag? Why, if he's being set up, how the hell did Corey get his passport, his driver's license?
Yeah.
He's got every one of his daughter's savings bonds. Like, Mrs.
Corey, you rat bastard. Also, you flippin' genius. Could you help me possibly find everything when I lose it?
Gould, I believe it was, and also Caneiro testified about the bag, right? How it was like an extension of his wallet. He always had it with him. And Miss Gould said it was always in, I think she said, the car. Now, do we think if that's even true? I don't mean to be demeaning, but if we think that that bag is really an extension and he always had it on him, he never went anywhere without it, do we think it was always in his wife's car, or do we think it was always in his car? I mean, if he's got that backpack with him a lot of the time, it's probably going to be in his car. Now all of a sudden, the neighbors come in and saying, "Oh, he always had the backpack," and the daughter says, "He's always got the backpack." It's like Canero's versus the world, all these different things that the people came in and said. It just seemed to be convenient with some of the state's proofs. But again, his backpack. What is he doing with all this stuff? The bag's found on November 20th. The bag's in the car that got pulled out at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like, if he was really sleeping and he woke up and he's a victim of a fire, how the hell did he pack a bag? Because he had to have just done it because the barrel's in it. So, we know that there was time between 4:08 and when the fire is discovered. And the fact that he's waking everybody up, shoeless, look at me, I didn't have time to put shoes on, kind of thing. It's just perpetuating a fraud. And there's no way that whole thing was set up. Again, the other camera that we would have seen, the storage locker. I don't mean to belabor it, but it's not so much that he shut the cameras off. It's what they showed or what they would have shown had he not shut them off. That's where he keeps all his guns. That's where the gun is. This is where the murder weapon is, right here. The other one with the laser sights is up in his bedroom, but this is the murder weapon in here. It's a locked storage locker. How is Corey getting in there? How's he getting in there? How's he opening it? How's he opening it again to put it back? Why would Paul shut off the camera?
State, why are you introducing logic into this? The defense made total sense until you added logic. You jerk.
And Corey put the gun away because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. The ammunition, this is the Fiocchi. We didn't bring all of it in. We have a sampling of it. But again, when we just looked at what the other camera showed by the workbench where all the guns was, where we would have seen the locker and putting it away. Now we're looking at this area over here. We're looking at the area. The window well is right here. You see a dresser. We saw a bunch of pictures. But this is the way it looked at 1:31 a.m. This is what that soup of articles Ms. Massalone called it this morning. It didn't start that way, right? This is it. It's not until he comes home and sticks all that stuff under there and then sets the fire right here. You can even do the right angle. Fire set right here. So tempting to destroy this. But we can't see, because the camera shut off, all the jeans and the scarf and all that evidence that's tucked underneath there. So, is it a mess? Is it burnt? Is it, wet? Yeah, it is. But were you able to get DNA results with Sophia Caneiro? RMPs also, huge random match probabilities and large likelihood ratios. It didn't affect Sophia's DNA. I mean, they want to get away from Paul's DNA, even though there's a bunch of results there. But we'll talk about how those are reliable. Dr. Reich, how many samples did he agree with me and say, yeah, that's a reliable result. Yeah, that's a reliable result. But I don't know why they're not worried about Sophia Caneiro's DNA being on the jeans, right? In the basement. Again, before we found out financial stuff, we already knew the cars, we don't know the DVR, but then all of a sudden, end of, I think it was November 28th, 29th, 2018, we start to get some DNA results. And what do you do, ladies and gentlemen? What are you going to do if the jeans with your DNA inside, so I don't care what size they are, he wore them. Okay, that's clear. He wore these jeans. They have his niece's blood all over them, and Jesse's. And it's not just Farmit's, it's not just Bodie, because there's testimony that state police used, traditional binary DNA to get Jesse Caneiro's DNA right here. So you want to talk about the evolution of who was my brother because they didn't get his DNA, or the Wi-Fi wasn't working, my camera didn't show up. What else are you gonna do? there was some cross-examination and there was some discussion today about, set the lights today, about, we heard on cross-examination that there was 2 pairs of jeans. You're gonna have pictures too. This is S231C. This is, I would submit to you, and you're gonna have it. I'm not asking you to believe me. This is your job to determine whether or not there's any degree of believing that these in the same pile aren't just a portion of what's missing from these jeans. I mean, maybe there's no way to conclusively tell. I don't really see any difference in coloring. I think we were looking at photos before, and in photos maybe there's interesting colors. But to me, you're missing a label here. You're missing a label here. Partially brown it off. You can see actually the top portion of what's there appears to be missing. And then you got the label right here. I mean,
Jim, I think he did. I think he set the house and then he got his family out. But then there was plenty of time for them to go in and out of the house several times before first responders came in.
first of all, if there was 2 pairs of pants, first of all, what's the difference? There's also a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, like there's other shirts. But second of all, it just seems like a grasp, like, wow, we found a smoking gun. There's actually 2 pairs of jeans. There's one. You can obviously, ladies and gentlemen, anything I say isn't evidence, okay? I'm not asking you to just believe me because I'm me, okay? I'm trying my best to explain to you what I think Ms. Wallace thinks about what the evidence shows. And I suspect that that is an attempt to try to create a second person who's involved here. Again, we won't know if there was 1 pair thrown into that pile or 2 because he shut that camera off at 1:31. This again is just the area. You've seen the photos. You saw what it looked like to begin with, and you saw what it looks like now in this photo, S1A 110. And ultimately, that pile has been significantly reduced given the effects of the fire. You know, we traced that hose from the outside. Now you can see it from the inside, exactly where that point origin is. I keep going over there, but you're all looking over here. I'll get the hang of it. This is the basement window right here. So we're looking right outside. Okay, fire, pile of charred particles. Just another angle, so we see that dresser over here. This is the area, and this is the point of origin of the fire, just basically within or just outside the window. Again, just another photo of what we're looking at. Why are there so many gloves? I didn't realize there were so many gloves. There's a lot of gloves in the basement. He did have a bunch. Paul had a lot of gloves, not black nitrile gloves, on the workbench near where all his guns were. You know, he cleaned guns. I mean, I get it.
JK, it's not letting me pull it up. I think there's something going on with X.
I don't know why there's so many here, or at least it's being alleged so many gloves. I mean, he probably put multiple gloves on, right? And he probably took them off the same way I would. That's why there's testimony with the DNA. It's like, we really don't know what's inside, what's outside, because, you know, this would be the outside if it came like this, but it could actually be the inside. There's a bunch of gloves because he's trying to not get blood all over him, right? He's trying not to leave fingerprints on anything in Keith's house. He's probably using multiple gloves, and ultimately, I think you'll find that he's using that scarf wrapped around the knife, stabbing Sophia, because we know from the DNA, we knew this early on, that Sophia's blood is on the handle of this knife. You see the knife, I'm not going to flavor. Wraps the scarf around his hand with the nitrile glove. That's why that facial injury, slamming into her face, pierced her brain. God help me. That's why they got DNA off the handle of the knife belonging to Sophia Canerio. Yeah, just showing you what you would have seen. That's the camera up there. And we force Pecan with the fire damage right here. And obviously we know he shut off his cameras, and obviously we know that Dr. Gould is his neighbor behind him, and police were able to get camera footage from. And
absolutely, JKD Buck. I don't know how you recover from that. And again, the state has been so measured that his show of emotion there doesn't read as false, doesn't read as manipulative, just shows Oh gosh. It just kinda shows it's human. And after the litany of bullshit that we had to sit through with the defense, I'm okay with him being just a little bit irritated. And on behalf of the victims, how dare the defense question whether Jennifer Caneiro was calling 911? How dare they call into question her parenthood? There were defensive wounds on that woman before he was able to get her under control so he could do what he did. She was fighting like hell. She's not a huge woman, and even though he was a lard ass, he was still a man, and, in reality land, it's not a fair fight.
19 Oxford. We start with, again, you've seen it. I don't want to belabor this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, but I have the burden in this case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Canerio committed these crimes. And if I left anything out, or if I went too fast, or if I rushed through it, I wouldn't be doing my job. So I appreciate your patience in this regard. But obviously, we're looking at 206-14. And again, we didn't know Paul Caneiro left in the middle of the night because he didn't tell us, right? So police have to get the footage and then ultimately have to make the observations that they made. So 719, obviously we're watching the car backing up, K-turning, and approaching the end of the driveway in Tilton. And then it's going to head towards 30 Tilton, 308 Green Grove, right onto Green Grove. Again, obviously it's not something that we get immediately. So now, 408-17, we're trying to confirm the rest of the cameras. And we're going to see Mr. Caneiro driving his vehicle into his driveway at 408. So after a 2-hour absence from the driveway, in the middle of the night, Mr. Caneiro's back at about 4:09.
Mr. Decker, I'm going to stop you for a second. Can we move that stuff? Can I just ask the jury to go in the jury room for a minute? Please don't discuss this case to Can I see counsel?
Not when ready. Not when ready.
Major Mom, the state still has several things to go through. They haven't covered DNA yet or ballistics. While they are moving at a really actually for as much as they have to cover with the burden, they're moving at a blistering pace compared to the defense. And they really are. He is trying to not belabor things, but he does have the burden of proof. So it does look like we will be continuing with closing statements tomorrow, and then we should be entering verdict watch tomorrow. So that is the plan, at least, I think. That is my guess. Do what now? Oh, it just went back to the beginning. Okay, so they must be coming back tomorrow. Now, I think the state has again done a really good job at being measured with the very emotional stuff that they do have in their arsenal. I think that the defense was honestly one of the grossest I've ever seen and the most tedious. I never in my life Oh, wait a minute. I've never in my life, seen anything like that. It was the weirdest thing. So, you guys, I don't know, but I'm gonna get the heck off of here, get some dinner, and you guys get the heck off of here, get some dinner. Let me see who I can send you to. Do, 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 do. And I don't see anyone really on right now, so you are free to go on the interwebs wherever you want to go. I will see you guys. I will be very honest with you guys. Uh, we might skip mornings with Mo tomorrow. I did not expect closing statements to go this long. So I was not anticipating all of the sitting down and all of the stupid. So we might just start the trial at the normal time for the trial and then go from there. Because good night, nurse. I did not expect this much stupid, but here you are. Yes, I am, Tammy. They are going to be doing the rest of the state's closing statement tomorrow. So we will be getting together tomorrow. I don't know if we'll be doing mornings with Mo. This was an incredibly long and intensely boring day, along with very frustrating. So we will see. Hopefully we will do mornings with Mo, but it will be a play it by ear kind of thing. So I will see you guys at least for closing statements tomorrow, if not mornings with Mo. So I will see you guys in, well, at least tomorrow. Bye, you guys.